Ready. Ready's off, Ruby.
Okay, we good? We have anything?
Sorry. Flash down.
Just say okay to that. Paul, we're gonna get started. All right. Do we have Letty back? Letty's there. Okay. All right, we're going to get started. Thank you, Letty, for
Sorry for the.
having a screwdriver in your bag and unscrewing things from the wall.
Sorry.
We are going to call the meeting to order. Sorry it's a little bit late, and we will start with the pledge. The flag moves again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to get started. And Chief Byrd, you're on a time crunch?
You do what you gotta do to start, I guess.
Okay, so maybe we'll move you up in the meeting if we can. So we are going to get started at 6:16. My apologies for the delay due to AV issues, but we seem to be back in business now. We did have, it sounds like Block 5 here today, who maybe unplugged something inadvertently, but we've got it going now. We will start the meeting as usual by reviewing and signing payroll and accounts payable for the period ending 5/18. It's a pretty ringer. For the period ending 5/18, we had payroll in the amount of $37,382.39. We had accounts payable in the amount of $138,342.60. We did have a standard ACH payment to Swayze of $232,200. Did you sign, Rec?
Was there an additional amount in the accounts payable that made it a bit more?
Something unusual in the AP this week. It was medical insurance.
Insurance?
Medical insurance.
Yep.
All right, once we get that for Joyce. Thank you.
One?
She has Rec. Yep, she's all set.
No, but I don't think you need me to, but. No, I don't.
All right, we're good. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, Joyce.
I will take a motion to have Andy participate remotely.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're not going to use him because he's not on yet.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Paul, are you an aye? Yep. So Andy, you're going to participate remotely. That does mean that all votes that we take tonight will have to be roll call votes because of Andy being remote. Why don't we do the consent agenda, and then why don't we move Chief Byrd in front of public comment, and then we will do public comment so that he can get out of here and get to his obligation.
Joyce, who didn't sign this?
Probably me.
I think Letty. I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda for this week.
Moved.
Second.
In this week's consent agenda is the public minutes from 5/7, non-public minutes from 5/7, which are sealed, the rec manifest, the treasurer's report, there's actually 2 in there because of 2 weeks, and building permits. Any questions or comments about the consent agenda?
There is a building permit that I'm abstaining from, but I just.
Okay, perfect. And we have a motion, did we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Andy?
Abstain?
John?
Yes, aye.
Aye.
Paul? Letty?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we will pass the consent agenda for tonight. And then we will move Chief Byrd up 1 slot to talk about Earn's Time. This is a continuation of our conversation from our last meeting. And we have a document in our packet as well as another document on your tables here. Welcome. And Karen, can you walk us through the document that is in our packet is the prior version as of January of this year with an added paragraph.
Correct. So the adjustments to page 2, it's highlighted. It says annual leave should be used during the calendar year it accrues. However, employees may carry a maximum of 2 weeks base hours, 96 hours for full-time fire, to the following calendar year and/or add time to their sick pool leave. If an employee has accrued hours in excess of the allowable maximum carryover, they may request to buy out the excess hours at a rate of 100% of their current rate of pay up to 1 week base pay, 48 hours for full-time fire, at the end of the calendar year.
Otherwise, it's the same.
Otherwise, it's the same, yes. So I just changed the 80 hours to 2 weeks base hours, and then in parentheses, I added 96 hours to differentiate fire.
Okay. And there were some questions about that math, and I'm assuming, Chief, that's what you're going to talk to us about with the other document?
I'm just trying to figure out exactly, if you take a look at the bottom scale, these are my 3 full-time people at the moment, and that's basically what it's gonna affect if it goes into place now. They're not even close to the max 48.
What about you?
Me? Oh, you don't wanna count mine? We'll figure mine out later.
Okay.
I'm not worried about me.
So this won't apply to you?
Does in the respect that it fits the whole,
It would apply to everyone if it's a town
Right.
policy, yeah.
Okay.
Point?
Yes,
Yeah, so just to be open, I met with Chief Byrd after the last meeting. He provided me information showing the hours for the fire, and looking at that, it was pretty clear to me that we were talking about 48 hours and 48 hours on the following week, so for a total of 96 hours, which, you know, then for purposes of carryover into the following year, you know, certainly made sense. Made sense as well that the buyout, which is added in the highlight for fire, looks like it's on page 2, near second bullet point, which allows a buyout of 48 hours, you know, certainly makes sense as well. So given that, I think it's certainly justifiable. I'd move to move forward as set forth.
sure. I think the confusion last time was that 2 weeks for one person is not the same as 2 weeks for another person in town, specifically, that's only fire that would apply to, right? Everyone
John,
else.
you understand it, because I know you had
Do you feel like your questions are answered, John, or do you still have questions?
I think that my major issue is I just want to make sure that from the town administration level that we feel as though this is a fair and equitable policy to be applied here, because I don't, what I want to avoid doing is having policies that are unequal for any town employees. So I don't want our firefighters to have, 1 second less of time that they deserve, and I understand that they have to work 24-hour shifts, so I get it, but I thought it was but I also don't want there to be a even perception of favoritism.
No, and I've told the guys that, if you want your vacation, take it. The only reason I'm doing this, that it just helps me to fill a schedule. Like I say, I've got 4 full-time guys, so you take one out, now you got a day shift and a night shift you gotta fill. And
You've-
so far, knock on wood, my per diems, my stipend people have stepped up, but that could change at any minute, so.
Karen, do you have any concerns at all about this being inequitable in any way for town employees?
I do not. I think it is very fair based off of the work schedules that they do and how they vary amongst the departments.
Okay. And theoretically, any employee in any department could take this. It's
As-
just that historically, it tends to be a little bit more likely for certain people to take this, including fire.
Hold on, are we talking about, there's 2 things that we're talking about here. One is carryover and one is payout. Are we talking about both together?
Carryover was already the policy. This is just delineating that 2 weeks is not the same for everybody. So the only change in that first part, because that's already been a Brentwood town policy that you can carry over 2 weeks, is just to clarify that 2 weeks equals 96 for fire. So that is the only change in
It
that
equals
policy.
96 for anyone who has a 24-hour shift.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Right. which right now is fire, but could eventually be
So
someone
maybe we
else.
should clarify, instead of just full-time fire for
Maybe we should say
people with
24-hour
24-hour
shifts.
shift.
Would that make more sense, just to cover us if we ever did, like, police as 24-hour shifts or something? That makes sense, just clarify, it makes it wider. So that's the first concept, so that is just a small tweak and clarification of a policy that has already been on the books. The new policy is to allow up to a 1-week buyout of unused vacation after you've rolled over the maximal amount that you can roll over. If you still have some left, you would be eligible to get that as a payout. And our preference would be for all of our employees to use their vacation for their mental and physical health. But there are certainly some times where that doesn't happen for a wide variety of reasons. Paul?
Yeah, I hesitate to go back to, I kind of liked it the way it was with fire because their schedule is such that we know it's, 96 hours, whereas if you just say 24-hour shift, it's kind of general. I mean, so the chief was able to, document that those are the hours that we're dealing with, but we won't know.
Are we likely to have anyone else in town anytime soon on a 24-hour shift other than fire?
I don't, to be honest with you, there's nobody that does it. It's pretty much a fired.
So, yeah, so it's a moot point then.
Okay.
So,
Then, yeah.
Well, I know, that's
Feels
why
right.
Change it
I'd
back.
rather just leave it as fire, the way it was.
are you okay with that, Letty? Okay. Okay. So that's the first concept. Is the board okay with allowing that parentheses, 96 hours for fire, for what we already have in place for rollover? And then the second is the new policy. We've never had an official policy of allowing earned time buyout. So this would be allowing 1 week of base pay that would apply to all employees.
Can I make a motion to accept the first part?
Sure.
I thought
So motion to amend the 2 weeks base pay,
Well-
or Paul maybe sort of made a
Sure.
general.
I'd made it
I'll
general
second
as to both, but
Would you have a
if you
problem
wanna
with doing
break it
both?
out.
I want to separate them out.
Okay. So I have a motion from Letty to approve the amendment of 96 hours for full-time for the 2 weeks base pay rollover during the calendar year. Is there a second?
Second.
Paul? And we'll take a roll call vote. Andy? Aye. John?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Letty?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll make that change in the policy. And then further discussion on the earned time payout. Questions, issues, any other problems with that?
I have budgeting concerns about this.
Say more.
I have no idea what this could look like in terms of budgeting. We will have to budget for everyone buying out the maximum that they could, which I feel like is not going to give us an accurate budget. I also feel like paid time off is a benefit that we offer people, kind of like we offer health insurance. And if you don't take health insurance, we don't just give you the money that we would have spent on it.
We do have a in lieu of insurance benefit.
But is it 100%?
It's not 100%.
Didn't you give an estimate last time as to what it would cost?
like
1 week's
30.
payroll is about $38,000, but that's also including details and all of those other things that are not just straight base pay, right? That's including OT and details.
The most conservative way to budget is to put 1 week's payroll, which would be the assumption that 100% of your employees took 100% of the payout, which we know will never happen. And then when you don't need that, you just don't raise it in taxes, as we, with other things that we put in there as precautionary.
How would we track
budget
it in
line
terms of
items.
budget-wise? Would we have a line for like,
I
would
think
want
you'd have to have a line.
I would want to appropriate that money in the benefits budget as opposed to adding that salary line into each individual budget.
so this would be for next year then? Like the benefits section would basically have another line for buyout or whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
you'd have to add it. I mean, we usually have enough room in our budget, but, because it's an anticipated expense, you'd have to add it, I would think, on the assumption that it could be 100%, even though we know that it won't. And just reminder to everybody that when we have something in our budget and we don't end up needing it, we never raise those taxes in the first place, and we drop the tax rate in the fall. So it doesn't really have an impact on taxpayers to have that in the budget. For this year, I think that's a separate discussion, because this would be an unbudgeted expense, and maybe it's just a few people, and maybe it's just these hours. In talking with Karen about this offline and in looking in our mail today at where we are with our budget right now, I don't think we're going to have any trouble, and I think you'll probably even have the money in your own budget
Yeah,
to cover
I've already
this.
put mine in.
So I don't anticipate that being a problem, but it is an unbudgeted expense for this year. So that would be, if we vote yes, it would be acknowledging that it is an unbudgeted expense that we are
So this would
offering to cover.
be approved for this year, not next
That's up
budget
to this
cycle.
board, I think. Yep. Do people
Well, no,
feel?
It's a policy that would be going forward, right? And that's the way it's written.
Yeah, it just isn't budgeted this year.
Right.
Right. But if we make if the date of the policy is today, then it's active as of now.
It
Correct.
says 5/21.
It sure does. Would you be okay with that idea, Letty? It feels slightly unsatisfying that it's an unbudgeted
I don't
expense. But
love-
we have unbudgeted expenses all the time.
I know, but usually we have a better sense, usually those happen at the end of the year when you have a better sense of what money is left.
Historically, it's been 1 to 3 people who have done this over the past couple of years and gotten an exception.
And it's been about
And that
$5,000.
were those non-budgeted as well?
Those are all.
Those were all non-budgeted.
Oh, it's
So,
With the exception of mine.
With the exception
mine
of
has always
yours.
been budgeted.
so that would be it's not a big difference from what we've done in years past.
Okay.
Is that a deal breaker for you, or are you okay with that?
I guess I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing, we don't have to be unanimous.
Yeah, agree.
I'd move the policy.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
We'll take a roll call vote. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Letty?
Abstain.
And I'm an aye, so that passes 4 to 1 abstention. And we are good to go, and this is active. Should we sign it now or wait? Because we're actually not changing anything. Do you want us to sign a version of it now, because it has today's date on it?
No, I'm gonna clean this up
Yeah.
Okay.
because I wrote all over mine. And then
I wrote on mine too. I wrote pass, yeah.
Same.
It's a big
Okay,
draft on
so we can sign that.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for accommodating.
Thanks,
me.
chief. We'll see you later.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
I wanna look like you.
We will now open public comment at 6:31 PM. We do have a microphone here. Maybe we can swing a chair over there so that people can sit. And as usual, please don't forget to give your name and your street address. And given that we have a big crowd here today, I think we will limit people to 3 minutes, just to make sure everybody has time to speak. And looks like we have a first taker, so come on up.
Can I make a motion?
Sure, please do.
Yeah, I think there are a fair number of people here who want to speak to the newsletter presentation. So I'm thinking it would make sense to have those people who are going to speak on that speak after the presentation. And if people wanted to speak about other stuff in public comment, great.
How does the board feel about that?
I think that makes sense, because if they have questions, then they might be answered with the presentation.
We can do that. So we could move that section of public comment down to bullet point E when we're going to discuss B&L.
My question's not about the newsletter.
Great.
Perfect.
All right, so go for it.
I have a question.
Don't forget your name and address.
Oh, excuse me. Lois DeYoung, Crawley Falls Road. I would like to know what's happening. You were reviewing the committees, the alternates and committee positions. You were going to be writing a new format, my understanding is, and you kind of put a hold on appointing alternates. And I'd like to know the status of that.
So we talked about this at length. Over a year ago, we changed the policy so that all open positions get published on the website. There's an open application process, and then there's a vote. Nothing has changed about that process. The only thing we are trying to improve now is to standardize the time of all the appointments, because they're all over the place and it's very hard to keep track of. Some are March, some are May, some are June, some don't have a date on them. So we're trying to clean it up, and every time there's a new select board elected in March, sometime in the following months after that, we're thinking probably July-ish, that we would do all reappointments in a couple of meetings and just keep it clean and get them all done at the same time. So that's the only big change.
Well, that's
The other-
what I'm interested
It
in.
is a change, yes. The other change we talked about is changing the process and trying to make it a more collaborative process between the board and the select board when we review applicants and interview them, and do that together rather than in 2 separate processes as has been done in the past, because it consolidates it into one meeting for the applicant and makes it a more collaborative process. So those are the 2 changes that we are working on now. The small issue, which I think we're going to talk about tonight, is some of those people who've expired or are going to expire before July will have to decide whether just those committees want to just hold and use their alternates, or whether they want to do a short-term, like, couple months reappointment to get everybody on the July schedule.
Yes,
so
and
we
that's
can
why
talk
I'm
about
asking.
that.
I want to apply for the library trustee alternate, and theirs is, they were looking at the meeting the other night, and they said that July, they're due, and they wanted to put people up, but we didn't know when, and that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Yep, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight, I think, because Karen had drafted. I don't know if we're going to review the policy that you amended.
I didn't have it completed for tonight.
Okay, so we can do that at the next meeting. But for right now, if a board has a particular issue, they don't have a quorum or something, we can work it out, we can do a short-term appointment. But our goal would be not to appoint somebody right now in May when we're trying to standardize everybody for July.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
I mean, if you're interested in being a library trustee alternate, you can fill
You can
out
fill
that
it out now.
form and
Yeah.
hand it in to them.
Oh, can
now.
I still, now?
Yeah, yep,
You're
Wonderful.
just ahead of the game a little bit.
You're just-
but-
That's okay, I'm good with that. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Hi, welcome.
Hello, Betsy Ibbotson, Scrabble Road. Just a quick question on the stuff that you guys just voted on about benefits and everything. Were you just talking about basically hourly people or management people? Because I know in the past, a lot of women that are managers here do work the extra time and they don't put in for the extra because in the past, they've not been paid for it. So I just want to make sure that if this is those changes you guys made, then department managers are still gonna, all of them, not just fire and police, will be able to take advantage of the same thing and not use all their leave and then, get paid whatever their time is.
Karen, can you speak to that? I'm assuming that this applies to everyone in every position, correct?
Yes, and then by putting it in the benefits budget, it alleviates that budget concern where some budgets may have a little bit, they have more line items to be able to absorb those.
Okay, because my point is, I know that you put in a lot of extra hours, and I bet you've never put in for one of them. Never got paid out extra. I don't know that, but I know that other managers, female managers, it's the same way. So as a board, you guys should, gals and guys, should be making sure that if the men are doing that the women are getting the same
For
benefit.
sure, they are, yes.
Yep, appreciate your comment. Anyone else? Come on up. Hi, Steph.
It's really hot in here.
She turned the air on.
Yeah.
Chief, can you open that other door again? Yeah, just, I think it's come.
Hi, Steph Kiza, Mary Bay Drive. I just wanted to follow up quickly. I know you have the committee updates section, so this may come up there, but regarding the presentation that we had at the planning board hearing last week about the RPC project solicitation process, I don't know if the board has had any discussions already about potentially submitting projects to the RPC for consideration on the 10-year plan. But if not, I wanted to, I guess, as a resident, planning board rep, and the town's RPC Technical Advisory Committee representative, urge you to consider it. And I would recommend considering proposing 2 additional projects. One that would be in line with the recommendations from the charrette last year to connect the Swayze School with the library, with the rec, with either a sidewalk or a shared use path, and also look at improving the rec driveway access for vehicles and pedestrians with something like a roundabout or possibly other alternatives. And then the other project I would recommend considering would be what was suggested as the long-term improvement from the recent RSA presentation, which is a roundabout at the South Road and Route 125 intersection. So the deadline for submitting projects is June 5th, which is why I wanted to just bring it up now. And I also wanted to offer, if it's at all helpful, if the board does decide to move forward with submitting some of these projects, I'd be happy to assist in putting together the wording and coming up with an assumed cost based on similar projects. It's my understanding that can help in the evaluation process. you don't need to have a truly engineered cost. It can just be something ballpark. And in my sort of professional capacity, I have experience doing that as a transportation engineer. So, yeah, that's long-winded, but I just wanted to kind of make a plug for that. So I don't know if you have any
We
questions
haven't
for
had a
me.
meeting since that meeting
Okay.
last Thursday. Do you get the sense of, do those applications come from the select board, from the planning board, from the economic development committee? I wasn't really clear if there
So
was a requirement of who it comes from.
I don't know if there's necessarily a requirement. My understanding is typically it would probably come from the town administrator ideally with support from, at a minimum, the select board, and other board support is definitely encouraged too, which partly on me. At the last meeting, it would have been ideal if I had paused and we had taken a vote to put together a letter of support, but I'll admit I was a little frazzled because our chair wasn't there and I was chairing it, so I did not think to do that. And we don't meet again until after the deadline, and I don't think I can do that over email. So unfortunately, I won't be able to get a formal letter of support from the planning board, but
We could have like a special 5-minute meeting just to discuss that.
We could.
It'd be helpful.
okay, yeah, I think it would be if we can do that.
I think so, right? They can call a meeting whenever.
So I'll talk to
As long as
Kristen
it's
about
posted
that.
appropriately.
Because we do have a couple weeks, so I'll try to get you guys a formal letter of support, but I just wanted to get on your radar in case you guys wanted to have discussions about it.
And the due date is actually the day after our June 4th meeting. So if we could get something together, and my assumption is that, at least the way I interpreted the presentation, was that some of the information we already have is probably sufficient.
Yeah.
That report, the DOT report, so that there's not a
Yeah.
lot of legwork. Is your impression that the only thing missing is the ballpark dollar signs?
Mm-hmm.
And you might be willing to help us with that?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to help with that and to help.
You already put together that whole grant application for
Yeah, that cost will, I wouldn't use that cost because that cost kind of got you through preliminary engineering, and the cost we would use for this would be to go a little bit further, but I could help kind of come up with that cost, and we can look at similar examples and whatnot. Yeah, and also just to clarify too, if the town does submit any projects for consideration, the town's not on the hook for anything by doing that. It's really just part of the planning process. The town would only be on the hook if a project was selected and put on the transportation improvement program, and then there'd be like agreements signed and everything. So doing this is by no means binding. It's really just to start the process.
Great.
Yeah, so
How time intensive is the grant application?
it's not at all. There's a portal. You just put in a brief description of the project, and I would recommend keeping it somewhat broad because it's so preliminary. We don't know exactly what we want to do. And you just put in a cost and I think a location. Again, I'd be happy to come and sit with you and go through it with you if you'd like. And I think Dave Walker from the RPC has offered to kind of get on a call and walk through it as well if there are any questions, but it's all online based.
And based on Dave's presentation that he gave, it seemed like kind of a no-brainer for the town. No risk, potential
Yeah.
reward.
Even if the projects aren't selected to move forward in the 10-year plan, having them, they then will sit on what's called the long-range transportation plan. Having them on that can only help if the town chooses to pursue other grant opportunities. And it just helps to have them on there in general to eventually move forward.
Okay. Is that something the board in general would be in favor of? 100%, yes, I'm seeing all yeses.
Yeah, we had already agreed, I thought, on the transportation for South Road, and
We had sent the letter to DOT supporting the intermediate solution. I think what she's talking about is getting the long-term potential solution on the 10-year plan.
I know, I thought we had agreed even further, but maybe not.
I don't think officially, and I don't think we officially agreed about this particular grant process. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, no,
We all
I know not this, but
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah, in general, I think there was consensus from the community as well. Okay. All right.
Okay,
I really
cool.
appreciate your offer to help with that, too.
Yeah, please let me know. Feel free to reach
Thank you.
out anytime.
Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you.
Other public comment?
This is totally unplanned, just following up on Stephanie's comments, just a couple of questions.
Becky,
Becky
can you give-
Dunham, 9 Block Drive.
You did it.
I chatter a lot, so I wanted to do that. This raises the question of what are the next steps with the charrette. I've read that report 3 or 4 times, and so many ideas and things going on. We've had one public meeting where some of these details, a path from the library to Swayze or a shared path or whatever, those weren't discussed. When does community input come into all of the various ideas? We have to approve, what do we have to do to move any of those forward? I'm just, want to be sure we're
Yeah,
still
I think-
following what we agreed
I
to.
think this board has been pretty clear that there is no plan in place. There is no definite next
Right.
step in place. This grant process would be sort of a wish list on a 10-year plan.
For long-term.
For long-term.
Long-term.
And I think the rec has started to have some conversations about some specific projects that they would like to see. So those
Okay.
conversations are happening at the rec right now, not at this board level.
Okay,
Not at the select board, but actually last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Time is,
okay.
It's passing.
thing for me right now, but within the last 2 weeks,
Mhm.
we had a actual vision session based on the
Right,
that was
right.
actually in this room, and it's on my list to talk about tonight.
Was that recorded? Is that something,
What?
since I missed it, I would love to
Everything's
see
getting
that.
recorded now.
Okay, so I'll watch for that. So that would be very interesting to find out how this process unfolds and the timeline. And
Exciting news tonight.
I am sure.
Ah, all right,
So
good.
we'll watch for that, and I encourage other people to watch it as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Other public comment? Come on up.
I just wanted to ask if John could get a microphone.
Oh, yeah, can we shift?
Kind of, but
Sure.
no, but yes, but no.
Sure.
Sorry.
It's on the list
It's on the
for
list.
later. It's on the list for later.
It is actually on the agenda, ironically enough.
I'll just speak loud. I don't need.
You kind of have one there. All right, so anyone else with public comment that's non-newsletter related? Seeing none, we will end general public comment at 6:46, and we will move on to our discussion action items. The next on our list is Trisha Canty to talk about graduation banners. Come on up. Hi. Hi. Have a seat.
Trisha Canty, South Road. I just wanted to approach the idea of putting some senior graduation banners kind of down this main road, probably from Lindy's past Swayze School. It's something that started with COVID with some surrounding towns. Epping doesn't, Kensington does it. They're about 4 feet long banners. They are fixed to electric poles, phone poles. They just say the graduation class, the children's names, and just a basic picture, usually their yearbook picture. It's something that I'd like to try to do for this town. It's small enough and manageable enough that, we have about 55 to 60 graduates this year, so that's something that's not overwhelming, and I just think it brings so much to the little town. And we have an award-winning elementary school, and just doing something like this for the graduates, I think just brings more positivity to the community and emphasizes how we value our town and value the education system. I've got a couple prices that I've found. This is from the Epping and the Kensington organizations that do it. The banners are technically approximately $65 to $70 a piece. They're about 2 feet wide and 4 feet long. The brackets are a one-time cost for each pole. It's about $50 to $70 each. They're metal brackets that go around the poles, and then there's like kind of straight PVC pipes that come out, and the banner is just slid on top and bottom.
Trisha, the brackets, you need one per or two, or just one bracket hold 2 signs?
So it would be 2 probably.
It looks like one bracket.
I think it's
It's
1 per
both.
side.
Yeah, so like on each side, it holds 2.
So it would be 2 brackets per pole.
because you're doing the front and the back.
Correct.
That's-
If we decide to do both, double-sided.
That's 2 students?
That is 2 students on the front, and you can do 2 students on the back. So that would be 4 students for 1 pole.
4 students, 1 pole, how many brackets?
I believe that's 2 sets of brackets. Because
So-
it's 1 front holder, and then there's 1 back holder.
So $100,
So $140 holds 4 students, because each bracket is
Correct.
$70, you need 2, and that
Correct.
holds 4 students.
Correct. Let's see.
Tricia, do you know in other towns how this is paid for and who's responsible for putting them up and taking them down?
So from what I've seen, Exeter has a project graduation fund that they, they keep adding to over the 4 years of high school. In other towns, that has paid in some years. Parents have the option to pay. And then if parents aren't able to pay, project graduation would cover the difference. In Epping, their town, I guess, purchased the initial brackets because it was in 2020 and everything was canceled for these seniors. So the town bought the brackets, and then just one of the parents just stores them for the off season, and then volunteers come out. Usually around May, they come out and they hang them in Epping and Kensington. And from what they told me, they have 3 fathers of students that come out and help with hanging up the signs. It takes a couple hours for them. They have a few less graduates than we have, maybe about 15 less. So I'm thinking another hour or 2 for the number that we have in town. Let me see.
And can I ask you, the graduation fund that you referred to, was that a donation fund? Was it in the town budget? Do you have a sense of how those funds are raised by those communities?
I don't know. I mean, the brackets I was told were purchased
Right.
from the town. The project graduation is like a fundraiser that the class of 2025 does for 4 years
Okay.
of high school. They have bake sales, they have
So,
car
okay,
washes.
so it's a donation.
To raise funds for, things that they want to do senior year, if they want to have a cookout or,
Gotcha.
a balloon arch or something. There's all these funds that they've worked towards. So that is one thing that they budget into now because they've done it for several years. I've been told that our town, if it is approved, if you guys want to move forward with it, we need to get permission from the utility company to use their poles. So that would be the next step. And then also permission would be needed from the parents to hang up images of the children. And the parents, once signing permission over, they would supply a picture to whoever is organizing this to get made into a high-resolution banner. The parents are welcome to keep the banners after they're taken down, which some of them really enjoy. And I reached out to Synergy Signworks in Manchester, which has done the banners in Epping. They're very familiar with it. They could handle it if we wanted to move forward. Maybe we could get like a mock-up to see if you guys approved it or if the town even liked it. And I've reached out to the community via just my own personal friend network and Facebook and, some of the school board members and the superintendent just to get their opinion on it. And it was very well received. Everyone thinks it's a great idea. It's a little bit of legwork, so I think that's why people haven't really jumped on board yet. I mean, it's going to need, it needs a couple people to help get it.
It sounds like it needs like a volunteer champion.
So
Pretty much.
Yeah.
if we agreed to fund it and get permission from the utility, are you in a place yet where we have the volunteers to do the rest of that legwork, the permission, the setting it up?
I have not gotten that far,
Okay.
so this is nothing we can do this year, obviously.
Okay.
We would be looking at next year, probably late winter is when all this kind of starts going. I would have to reach out to the senior coordinator for the next year and also their project graduation, team and see what they're thinking.
it's a little tricky because it's broken up into towns. So like it would only be the Brentwood kids hanging in Brentwood. So I have to figure out how to navigate that with funds, if it's just like straight Brentwood funds, or if the project graduation is willing to disperse some of that towards the difference. So this is the first step, so I would have to definitely clarify those things.
Okay. Sounds like the board maybe needs to have a discussion about the concept in general and whether we would be generally in supportive of moving forward with some of these, decisions about what kind of funds we would raise, how we would raise it, who would be the volunteer coordinator. There's obviously a lot of moving parts. So I wonder if the board has any questions or comments, either for Tricia or just general comments about this.
I think that this is a great idea, but I think that this should be a school initiative. Like, I think that should be run through the school to create the banners. And when I had spoken to Tricia, what I had envisioned was that the banners were done at the school. They were created. They got all of the permission slips through all of their yearbook photos, and we were kind of handed a stack of banners that our highway department could hang. I would work with Wayne to get the permission from the utilities to put the brackets on the poles and leave them there, and then they could hang them.
It sounds like, if I understood you correctly, that what some other towns do is the town was financially responsible just for the brackets, and the whole banner part happened outside of the town offices, was the vibe I got from you.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
We use the
It's just-
brackets for other things too, I'm assuming? Like if we wanted to hang
Potentially
bunting for
could.
the 4th of July parade, we could, or if there's other.
Someone mentioned
I would
actually
assume so.
hanging veterans' images from town on those poles for.
I think what I hear you say, Karen, is the town, we're not sure whether the town wants to take on this project of coordinating these photos and these banners and the
Correct, and
permission
the permission
slips.
slips,
Which
correct, right.
I think, I don't know if the board agrees with that, but I think I would agree that that's not necessarily a town function. So I think
It would have
the
to be
ask,
a volunteer from
Yeah, I
town
think-
to
right.
help.
so I'm interpreting your ask as paying for the brackets and doing the permissions and talking to the utility. That would be what this board would be approving. Am I reading you correctly?
Yeah, I guess the approval process for funds, I didn't even think of that as tonight. I was just seeing if it was something that you guys would be on board with, and then the next step would be getting the permission from
Right.
the utility company.
Sure.
And then once, if that's denied, then we're done. But
Right.
if it's approved, then, we could have another meeting to clarify the funds and how to, just break it into one town from, a very large
Sure.
high school, and
Sure.
how every year we're gonna manage that. So,
Yeah, okay, great. Comments, questions from the board? Thoughts about this?
Yeah, generally, it sounds like a great idea. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, let's see if we can get the approval. It sounds like we probably can, and then from there, bring back to us sort of the detail, right? In terms of like, how the volunteers are gonna work and,
Okay.
and that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
yeah,
And
Yeah.
I would like also this is just me, y'all can, if you feel differently, that's fine. I would think that it would be considerate, if we're gonna do a project like this, if we are gonna pay for the brackets, that we also,
I'm just bringing this closer to you.
that we also offer, the, possibility of maybe setting aside a little extra funds other than just for the brackets, in case there are families that want to participate but don't have the means to pay for the banners themselves.
Yeah, I think we'd have to figure out how the banners were going to be funded. It sounds like that would be a whole kind of separate discussion. I think it's a great idea. I think it'd be really nice. I've seen them in other towns, and they always look like really great,
So does that request for the pole use need to come from the select board?
probably.
I make a motion that we ask permission?
Second.
Andy, do you have any comments about this?
I don't. Seems like a great idea, and it's definitely something Wayne would have to hang. I wouldn't want
Yeah.
volunteers hanging them.
All right, so there's a motion to move forward with the first step of asking the utility company. And there's a second. We'll go around roll call vote. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Letty? And I'm an aye, so it's a great idea. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you.
And we'll see what we can do. And if we
Okay.
get it all figured out before the end of the calendar year, we do have ARPA funds. So this might be something that we would consider, because obviously this is a non-budgeted item, but it might be something that we might consider using some ARPA funds for to pay for the brackets if needed. It's only a few $1,000s in the end if it's just the bracket cost.
Yeah.
So we look forward to hearing more in the future, and hopefully,
Okay.
if the community is interested, do you want them to contact you or contact
Sure.
us? Or-
Sure.
So if you're interested, contact us and we'll get you in touch with Tricia, or contact her directly if you know her, especially if you want to help or volunteer or raise money.
Yes. please.
Okay?
All of the above.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Chief Ventura and Lieutenant Doty next.
Back to everybody.
You can come back up here if you'd rather.
You have to.
So the first thing I wanted to do was, the last meeting, we requested some of those ARPA funds for a cruiser, to the tune of $75,000. At the moment, we're gonna withdraw that. Okay, the cruiser is still in need. I don't want that to be mistaken. I just got a couple of maintenance bills and I was not happy, but we've got to pay for the cost to get fixed. And I know we're gonna start some discussions about future budgets and things like that. So at the time, we're gonna withdraw that request. On the flip side, though, in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna come to you folks with what was still needs for the department, several of them, but we've been pushing them off for greater things. So we're gonna submit that to you folks. Still requesting ARPA funds, but by a lot less. Probably, maybe even a third of what we asked for. So it's not gonna be a ton. And I think that also leaves a lot of ARPA funds, if you approve those, to other departments to start to try to organize some things, because we still got some money in that we need to allocate, I think, by the end of the year, right? So, but I just wanted to tell you we're gonna withdraw that tonight.
Okay.
So, thank
Okay.
you for listening.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And Lieutenant's gonna talk about some new ordinances that, we're gonna just put out there tonight and invite the public to come to whenever we schedule it, next meeting maybe, to comment on the ordinances. I'll leave it to the lieutenant.
And for the board members, we have a copy of ordinances in the packet. They've been slightly modified, so the loose ones that you have on your table are the most up-to-date versions, as far as my understanding.
So you're presenting to the board, so you can feel free to sit here.
Feel free to sit here. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
All right.
So I have been working on just reviewing ordinances for a little bit here. There's obviously been a lot of talk about noise ordinance lately and stuff like that. So this is more of an update for both a noise ordinance and a hawkers and peddlers ordinance. The former ones, I think the noise was from like 1977. Hawkers is from 92. So they're a little out of date. If you guys review them, I reference some RSAs in there. And the whole point of them is to work on just improving, obviously, the quality of life within the town of Brentwood. So not so much, installing more laws and more rules for people to follow, but just giving people the best quality of life that we can. Something else?
Well, it's aimed at public safety.
Yeah.
We wanna know who's in town setting, peddling and things like that. We need to know that.
Especially that season's coming, so.
There is a state statute that used to be fairly long, and they repealed the entire thing in 2023 for hawkers and peddlers. So it leaves us, there's another update in a different statute, but it doesn't leave us with much, other than if we adopt our town ordinance regarding. Too many times, especially at this time of the year, we get calls of suspicious people coming through town. We don't know they're in town, right? We need to know, okay? There needs to be a permitting, there needs to be a vetting of these people, right? Part of this ordinance requires them to submit a state criminal background check. Because we wanna know who's knocking on doors, right? And we want the people in town to know that as well. And then the noise ordinance is just that. You know, we've had one in the books forever, but it was aimed at what they call misuse of power. People feel that. That's what the original noise ordinance.
I think they refer to burning rubber in the original.
Yeah, burn around.
Ordinance, in quotes, of course.
So we do technically have a noise ordinance on the books, but it's outdated.
Yeah, it's only misuse of
It's
power.
only burn and rubber.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's more than that, though.
Is
You're
it?
thinking of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, they're updated to be
Yeah.
more consistent with state statutes too. We we can be more restrictive in town than a state statute, but we just have to be careful. So we wanted to present some updated, but these are generally the particular ones that most towns have a decent policy. So it's just time for us to start updating that, and that's what we're presenting.
So can we start with the noise ordinance first? Is the language in this ordinance directly reflective of the New Hampshire RSA, or is it different? Is this our version?
It's a more reader-friendly version, if you
Okay.
will. Yeah, more inclusive for the town of Brentwood's needs.
Yeah, and I don't know if we want to get in the weeds now, or if it's something I would,
That's a public, we're just hoping to get it out there.
yeah.
So that people here.
Noise ordinance.
Yeah, sorry about the baby.
Can understand that we're introducing these and invite people, hopefully we get this many people for a discussion about ordinances.
Yeah. Can I meet, like, again, I don't know if people want to get into the weeds. I'm wondering if I could meet with you at some point just to kind of go over some.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, great.
The noise, it actually cites the disorderly conduct statute. So it's very consistent with that statute.
And the 11 to 6 time period and the 12 to 6 on Friday and Saturday, does that come out of the statute, or is that our?
That's where it's reflective of Brentwood. The statute, I think, reference unreasonable times. Yeah.
Okay, so this is just putting numbers to what the
Yep.
statute is more general.
The reason people
Okay.
generally do more ordinances, because they always reflect what the state statute is in some form or another. But you want to tailor it to your community. Okay? I can't think of one that we would put in place here that wouldn't be appropriate for Brentwood off the top of my head. But this is why we're doing this, is to tailor it to Brentwood. And not that it's a money-making operation or anything, but all town ordinance fines go back to the town.
No, I think it's a great idea to define it. I had some concern in particular with the exception in G, and that's, again, I don't want to go into the weeds with people.
But again,
But,
fresh sets
yeah,
of eyes
yeah.
and comments, that's what we want. We
Yeah.
want to tailor it to you folks, so we can certainly
Yeah.
that.
Certainly happy to make adjustments if needed.
Are these versions that we have in front of us your final version to present to the public?
Yes, unless our discussions with separate board members change them, but
Okay.
yes, this is what we actually refined it again today, so,
Okay, and then to be discussed at a public hearing?
yes.
Sorry.
Two?
Yes, you're required to have two.
Two public hearings required by law. Gotcha.
Sorry, so just to clarify, G is basically saying that exemptions are emergency maintenance work performed by the town, state, or PUC, including snow removal. So the plow can go by and be loud whenever.
Correct.
And the operation or use of agricultural equipment to include but not limited to tedders, balers, and tractors. So basically,
We can farm.
you can farm.
Farm.
So
We're a farming community.
yes, everything else would not be exempt.
Unless there's a exemption from the board or from us.
Okay.
Yeah, there still has to be some discretion with police in certain things, right? But this is the framework with which we'll be working. These two.
Why do you need bullet point G if it just reiterates C and D? Does it mean, am I missing something? It just says vehicles, tools, and equipments enumerated in C and D, except during time periods of their prohibited use. So doesn't it just restate C and D? Yeah. So it might just be, it's kind of a restatement, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take it out to make it, again, more.
I just don't know if it meant,
Is
if
that more
it,
for like
Yeah.
chainsaws and stuff like that?
Vehicles, tools, and
Or
equipment.
not?
and obviously, we're gonna have two public hearings, so all of these points can be discussed and deliberated on.
We can look at that.
We can take a look at that, okay. All right. Board members with any questions or comments on this? We're not intended to hash this out tonight. This is just to get it out in front of the public. Anybody want to make any comments or have any questions for the lieutenant or the chief? Okay, so that's on the noise ordinance. And then the hawkers, peddlers, and itinerant vendors, same thing. Any questions or comments for these folks on the first draft here?
I just have a couple comments on hawkers and peddlers.
Go ahead.
We just went through this in Sandown. RSA 320 and RSA 321 were stricken by the legislative, so those no longer exist, as well as the state hawkers and peddlers license.
There's still a small section under, I think it's
31
that applies.
Yes, no, I totally agree, but
They did
the
repeal
the
those.
definitions just referenced from those two statutes.
So could we just take out those?
So
two
we would
references?
potentially need to take out the references to those RSAs that have been removed.
But we could still use those, we could still use the definitions though, right?
Yeah, sorry,
There's,
I meant
it
to strike
refers
that out
to
earlier.
320 and 321 in here.
Okay.
Basically, if you delete it, everything else is fine. Not the definitions, just those numbers.
The reference to the RSA. Okay. I had one question about this, which is it general practice for these to be approved by the select board, by the police department?
The permits.
Yeah,
Usually it's the select board if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
that's how
But
other towns do it?
Yeah, you could also have a designee if you'd like.
I'm just thinking in the summer, we generally only meet on the first and third
Yeah.
week, and I don't know if that would be a problem for
I-
people who want to come into
Put in there
town.
the select board or their designee.
Or their designee, okay,
If you designated the town administrator to be able to approve these.
gotcha.
How many of these do we expect to get, I mean, roughly? How many?
Karen said hopefully none.
But the time frame in here also works around your select board schedule
Okay.
on purpose.
It just varies. I mean,
There's
those,
usually a few.
yeah.
Get more people
Yeah.
calling about them out there. You know, part of this is an education tool to those hawkers and peddlers that come out regularly to announce, hey, we have an ordinance in Brentwood now, you need to abide by the rules. You know, there's a permit fee and there's a process. You know, so the old one didn't have a lot of teeth in it, so we're really going out there to identify them, say, who are you and what are you doing? And then we generally let the person that called who these people are and are dangerous and things like that. This has a whole process to it. It makes it much smoother and much easier for the town. But generally, you don't get a ton of them,
Yeah,
but you get enough of the suspicious calls. We do get a lot of those calls.
yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I have another question, which is, there's some criteria on here whereby the select board could deny an application, including a finding that the person has been convicted of an offense, or that they have been dishonest, fraudulent, or deceptive, or that their application contains false information. How would the select board obtain that information?
So it would more or less be put on by the police department.
Okay,
You know, because they should be providing us with a background check as it is, and then obviously we'd find that information out.
gotcha,
through
okay.
background
I just wasn't clear how that information would come to us.
check. Yeah.
Provides for a criminal record, right?
Correct. Yep.
They need
Yeah.
to provide the
Yeah,
criminal
yeah,
Yeah.
which is good,
Yeah.
yeah. You talking
See.
about like a state criminal search?
Yeah. They're required to provide it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So it would go through the police department and then sort of flow to us?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha, that was my question.
intended.
Great. Board members, questions or comments on this? Okay, so we can put these on the website and they'll be in our minutes, and the public is welcome to take a look at them, and we will let you know when we're gonna have the public hearings. Do you folks have a preference for how long of a period of time you'd like these to float around out there before a public hearing? And it sounds like we need to do two, separated, Karen, separated by a certain amount of time?
I think it has to be 10 days.
10 days apart, so they'll, okay,
So do 10 days notice before the hearing and then separate the hearing.
And I'll make those changes, take out those numbers, and
do you want to do this as soon as our next meeting, or do you want to give it a little bit more time?
If the statute requires them to be in the newspaper, it would have to be the meeting after that.
Okay,
Yeah, we're in no rush.
okay,
You know, there's not a.
we're just getting it out there in front of the public.
Things that,
Yeah,
you know, more towards the front
Okay,
burner of
perfect.
town now, so.
perfect. Okay, so we will let you know when we're going to have those public hearings.
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Next, we have Julie Avant from the Trustee of Trust Funds. Hi, welcome.
A number of years ago, I presented with some inactive accounts and accounts, trust funds that had some de minimis accounts. And at that time, I believe 3 were closed, and the board asked that we keep open the forestry fund. And this fund was established in 2005 based on a 2004 forest management plan. And in it, it was intended to be used to fund forestry projects such as culvert repair, cutting, and some logging. I'm not sure if we have a forestry committee or department, but it was established in 2005, and it's been, almost 18 years or around there, and it's never been utilized. And was wondering if there's a plan, or if we have a department that would be using these funds, or if the town wants to take the funds back, or possibly have the funds be utilized by maybe the Conservation Committee, use them.
How much is in there?
Right now, approximately $6,500. It was established at $5,000. It's just been, increasing slowly.
One of the things that's come up recently, Becky, you were talking about the rec visioning session. One of the things that has come up to us several times is how folks love using a bunch of trails and would love to see more trails or better maintained trails or the likes. I'm not a trails expert, but it's forestry money. I'm just thinking we have tons of trails not maintained, so just an idea.
Are there
Becky has a-
restrictions on what it can be spent on?
I believe,
What'd you say, Liddy?
let's see.
Are there restrictions on what it could be spent on?
This money would be used to finance our forestry program.
I wasn't teasing.
And it said specifically to, like I said, culvert repair, logging, selective culling. So perhaps if the intent is to maybe work on some trails, maybe a warrant article would be in line, because it's really not intended for that purpose, but it appears that it's not going to be utilized.
What if we were using that money to maybe put in a culvert for better drainage to make the trails more usable year-round?
Then that would, I believe, qualify.
So my suspicion is it hasn't been used because I don't know that we have a forestry plan?
Well, we have that book right there.
We have this book, there's a plan,
Oh, okay.
forestry management plan.
What's the date on that?
2004.
Right around the
and
time of the
it's
warrant.
Provided by Forester Charles Moreno.
So would money from that trust fund need to be expended by a forestry, or would it be the select board that would expend it, or would we have to have, because didn't we just approve?
I think it would be,
forestry
we
people?
would allocate it, but it sounds like it would have to be for a forestry
It needs-
intent.
it
It would have to
needs-
abide by the
right.
warrant.
Okay.
The initial warrant from 19
Right.
years ago.
Okay.
Right. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and if you feel that there'd be a way to utilize the funds, that would be good.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry
Is
that
that
you
the
waited
only-
that long for this birthday.
Is that the
but thank you.
only fund that you feel is
Yes.
problematic right now? Okay.
Right,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
All right, next we have Jim Hajar with the Brentwood newsletter. And I don't know, Letty, did we get his slides up?
Hold on.
Just give us 1 second. Letty's
Behind.
working. Yeah. Are your slides different from the email that was sent to us, or the same information?
It's the same information,
Okay.
but I have.
So Andy's
I have-
already seen
I have
that.
an intro slide or
Okay.
two, but it's just bigger so everyone can see it. Oh, thank you, Letty. That's good. Well, thank you for allowing me to address the board tonight and present this proposal. I also want to thank everyone who's here behind me tonight who came to learn more about it. And I promise, I know I like to talk a lot, but I will keep this as brief as possible and really allow questions and comments at the end. And thank you for allowing the public comments to go after I gave the presentation. I think that'll help. So just a little background information. So the format of the draft agreement that was sent basically came from a draft MOA that the town sent to the Brentwood newsletter back in December of 2022. And at that time, there was a lot of community feedback regarding the Brentwood newsletter. Clearly, the Select Board sent a message that trust was a key issue with the BNL. Citizens had shared suggestions for a contract that controlled content and having documented processes. I personally met with many community leaders and BNL volunteers who were willing to share thoughts and feelings on the BNL. So the BNL board basically evaluated these inputs, and we created this draft statement of assurance that I sent to you all that we can review tonight. And just so you know, that we called it a statement of assurance only because we weren't sure what the town would want to call this document. Originally, it was an MOA. I've heard MOU. To me, the title, and to the board, the title's irrelevant. Whatever you think is appropriate would be acceptable to us. So right now, that title line is strictly just something we picked as a starting point. But I believe this document really is the result of our whole community coming together to preserve the Brentwood newsletter as a town treasure. I think Brentwood has shown in surveys that we really want to end political divisions and for people to work together for the good of our community. And I think that the community has held living room conversations and Braver Angels events to help all of us communicate better and to seek common ground. And this draft agreement that I sent is really, I believe, the BNL's commitment to the community to support bringing us all together. So again, the purpose of the agreement, why would we want this? Well, I heard the word transparency many, many times. And I think this agreement creates a transparency to the Brentwood newsletter process, as well as to the town. It contains revised and clearly defined Brentwood newsletter policies regarding content. A lot of these policies were in place prior to 2022 when the town sent the MOA, but there also are some new ones and some that were modified based on input we got from the community. The policies apply to everyone, all content, regardless of whether the submitter be a town employee, an elected official, a concerned resident, or even myself, the editor of the newsletter. One thing that we are recommending is a liaison to be named so that we can have a public process to document any complaints that can't be easily resolved. And basically, we want to set clear expectations on the payment terms and conditions. And the overall goal would be to establish an agreement that builds and supports trusts between the town and the Brentwood newsletter. So in Section A, basically details all of the policies regarding content that would get into the BNL. Like I said, a lot of these policies were pre-existing in 2020, but some were modified, but all of them are in place right now. Nothing here is to be approved. This is all in place, and we've shared this in some of the newsletters, and I shared it at town meeting as well. And again, the policies apply to all submissions. Quickly, the first one just says that all the content that we publish will be pertinent and relevant to the residents of the town of Brentwood. And number 2, we will not publish any letters of submissions expressing the author's personal opinion unless it involves an issue that directly affects the town of Brentwood. It does not contain anything that can objectively be deemed a personal attack against individuals or any group of persons. It is reviewed and approved by the BNL Review Board to assure that none of the content is unreasonably offensive or politically divisive. Again, whether it comes from residents, elected officials, or BNL representatives. Finally, you need to be a resident of Brentwood to submit, and the author's name has been clearly identified. And again, some of them actually came from conversations I had with the Select Board, some of these improvements and changes that we made. The next slide, Letty. So Section A continues. Number 3, basically we eliminated all political endorsements of any sort, whether it be local elections or candidates or anywhere else, state or national. But we do allow, obviously, the candidate statements from each person who's running for a position to represent the town of Brentwood. Number 4 talks about that basically printing town-related information. This came from the original MOA with the town. we expanded it to include that we would work with the town, because we do this all the time. We work with the different organizations, provide feedback to maybe modify the content to make it either more clear or better present the information to the residents. But again, we want to, and we detail in here that the BNL will never make a change to any submission, whether it's from the town or someone else, without prior approval from the submitter. And then number 5, it just establishes a clear expectation on printing of approved submissions. So basically, if you don't violate any of the standards that we have listed, we will strive to print that submission in the month that it is received. But understanding that space limitations exist, if we could not print it in that month, we would notify the submitter and we tell them that we will run it in the next month, in the next edition. Next, Letty. The liaison role is something that we feel is important because in case there's ever a complaint that arises from someone towards the BNL, we want it to be publicly documented, and we would like to have a method and a process where we can work to resolve that complaint, right? So just so you know, all of the submissions that come in are currently reviewed by an editorial review board. And I mean, since I've been involved in these past 18 months, in many cases, we go back to the submitter and we'll ask them to tweak something or change something just to improve the readability, whether it be grammar or clarification. And sometimes we'll ask for additional material to be added to make it more informative to the readers. And yeah, there's been cases where we've asked, could you please remove that sentence or change that word because it starts to violate some of our policies in Section A. And this is done between myself and the review board with the submitter. And basically, in almost all cases, the issue is resolved between the submitter and myself and the Brentwood newsletter. And oh yeah, there's been cases where we've had to tell people, a submitter, that we cannot print something that you sent in because it violates one of our policies. And again, I don't think anything that I've experienced would ever have gone to this liaison, but we feel that it is important that if the person wanted to bring it to a liaison, to publicly say, I don't agree with the board's decision, that we could have somebody who would help mediate and resolve that complaint, and then have that process be public to allow full transparency so that all the complaints and the resolutions will be documented. At the bottom, I really don't know. We suggest that perhaps someone like the town moderator could do this, be a neutral individual, but we're open to other suggestions. And again, I just want to say, I don't believe there'll be many cases that would require this liaison, but we feel it's important so that our residents and the town does have the ability to publicly document any sort of complaints. Next. Section C and D. Section C just recognizes the select board's authority, of course, to pay the BNL if we meet all of the provisions of this agreement. And obviously by that, it also gives control that if any of these provisions are not met, then payment doesn't have to be made. Section D just summarizes the payment terms that were set in the last warrant article, the amended warrant article. And basically, the agreement ends there. The original MOA had several other sections regarding, no offense, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer, but it was like legal terms regarding confidentiality, severability. They seem like standard legal clauses that would be in an MOA or an MOU, and we were fine with all of them. I just kept them out to keep this simple, and if the town really wants those in there, we have no problem with all those original sections. Like I said, legally, they seem more to be just like standard clause language that would put in there and really had, so again, I just removed it to simplify the draft proposal. Okay. And in closing, I just would say, the BNL board feels that having a signed agreement between the town and the Brentwood newsletter is really an important step in order to set clear and specific expectations and to provide for a greater level of transparency between the community and the Brentwood newsletter. And I just would ask, please, let's all of us in this room work together to make this a success for our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And Jim, if you can just stay there for right now. I think what we'll do is why don't we have questions and comments from the board? And after the board has had some initial discussions, then we can invite the public to express their feelings in public comment. So based on, this is identical to what we had received by email from Jim, I think 10 days or so ago. So I'm going to open it up to the board for questions or comments for Jim. Anyone like to start? Paul?
I don't have any questions per se. I mean, from a comment standpoint, I think it's an important step in order to put those content standards into place, because I think that is what people were looking for in terms of prior conduct in the past. So I think that this goes a long way towards, approaching and dealing, with those issues.
Right.
I think, I mean, I don't need to go through everything that you, just went through, but I think, the importance of, not being divisive in terms of statements, not being offensive, not being political, and just allowing candidates to put in their statements. I think those are all important, as well as the provision for the liaison. So, to me, we can have discussions about whether whether the newsletter should be a independent entity versus some sort of committee in the town, which I know there's been some discussion about. And I don't think that's really, I don't think that that's significant at the end of the day, because, the bottom line is that people on select boards change. Some of you might say, thankfully. People on committees, change, and it's really going to be up to those people versus policies that we put into place. And I mean, we can have a discussion about what might be better than this, but this seems to, in my opinion, address all of those concerns that people had from years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say thank you for that? And I will say that it took time. I mean, and a lot of the feedback came from people who were sitting in front of me and behind me. And like I said, there were a lot of people who met with me one-on-one, and I can't thank them enough for. They shared there were hurt feelings in town, and really I knew taking this on from the beginning, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to help heal people and heal the community. And since we've honestly put these, Section A is already on our website, and we've been using that for quite some time. As an editorial review, and I think all four of them are here tonight, our job has become really easy. I think the message has gotten out there, what we will print and what we will not print. We don't have a lot of stuff coming in that you go, so I think a lot of what people were looking for has been implemented. And I really think if someone had something in the last 18,
The ceiling is shaking. Jim, what are you saying? I don't know.
It's fine.
The heavens are speaking.
Yeah, please. No, I just wanted to say that I think in the last 18 months, I've gotten a lot of feedback. I think the team has done a lot of good work in setting up these policies and implementing them. And I think it's changed the newsletter for the better. And I think this is really what the community always wanted from the newsletter. And I think this is now we're on a 48th year of having a newsletter in our town. I really think it's a gem that I really would like us all to work together to keep. Thank you.
And just as a matter of transparency, I mean, Jim, when you talk about people on the board, Jim asked me, how could, this be made better?
We've certainly had a lot of conversations about it over the years. A lot of words have been spoken.
So, I mean, I think I gave you my honest thoughts about how it could
Absolutely.
be, made better and what kinds of, policies would need to be put into place. Because that was a big point of discussion.
Absolutely.
I think you were receptive to it. Maybe, there were some people who didn't like to hear it, but, it needed to
No.
be said.
Absolutely.
Jim, can I ask you a question? Did you
Sure.
receive the email response that I sent to
I
you
did.
about this?
I did.
So I shared it with my board members, and I just want to ask you, because when I read this, I was definitely impressed with how many things were in here that had not been possible before. And I thought that was a really amazing, good step forward. And when I got to the end of this and saw the points about a town liaison and public disputes being part of the select board general meeting minutes, and I got to the end, the feeling that I got, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that this document represents an intention of the BNL to be a non-controversial, non-problematic, fair, equitable information source for the town. That's how I read it.
Amen. I think
And
that's what it
I'm
had been for a
giving you
long
credit
time.
for
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
And
No, don't give me
so
credit. Honestly,
I'll
it's-
give your board, whoever came up
no,
with this.
the community did this. I really,
I
it's
appreciate
the
that.
community and yourself. You gave me feedback.
I did give you
One
some of this feedback.
About having everyone's name there.
Yeah, that
author.
was my thing. You got
It
to put your
is.
name.
It is.
So I read this, and what I thought to myself is, this describes a town-funded newsletter. And the vote on the warrant article was people saying they want taxpayer money used for this. Why not bring the newsletter under the town? And what, when we had the discussions a couple years ago, it was, this is a group of unpaid volunteers working hard for the good of the town. And then the private 501c3 was created around the time of the maximal strife in town. And to me, everything that I read here, including having a liaison and having discussions at the select board, there's no other private company that we deal with that we would be adjudicating community complaints at our board, right? Because we don't control your company or your board. So I feel like if we really want to move forward, that this needs to be a true town newsletter. And I personally can't see any reason why we wouldn't. It would be completely paid for by the town. We would probably save money. We could do bulk drop shipping to everyone. We could keep the same look, the same style. I guess when I read this, I just feel like I was wondering, why does this need to be a separate organization when what would really make it be a taxpayer-funded newsletter is to make it be a taxpayer-funded newsletter under the town? So I wonder if you can speak to that.
Sure. I mean, and again, I'm an engineer by trade, and I guess now I'm an editor of a newsletter. But I think legally, you don't. I don't want the town of Brentwood to make a community newsletter, because I believe you'd be opening up the town for all kinds of potential issues with, well, let's put it this way. If you were going to have a town letter that went out with information, I'm pretty sure you would want to limit it for legal reasons to just town departments, town organizations, town employees. And I really, really think you'd be opening up a legal can of worms. Plus, I don't think it would be right for the town to be trying to produce a community newsletter like the BNL. And the reason why I say that is because I think the town, and I don't recommend that the town should print things like obituaries, graduation notices, and stories with pictures of graduates, the Brentwood Church News, notices about local charities and events and fundraisers, stories that welcome like a new business that comes to town.
Can I ask you why? So why, traditionally back in the day, right? Brentwood was just it was a volunteer group that was publishing essentially a fully town-funded
Sure.
newsletter. And
Which
those
we
things
still
were
are,
always
which we still
published
are.
back then.
We still
So
are.
if the town decided, I mean, I think that
no.
residents in town like a lot of that content. Is there a reason we
agree.
couldn't have that content? in
Well,
the
I don't know
town-funded
what you mean,
newsletter?
because I think for 48 years, it's always been an outside organization that did the newsletter.
It really wasn't.
Well,
It was not its own organization until 2020, and then it was not a 501c3
No, well,
until
I
2022.
I can only speak to, and the fact that the organization,
It was a volunteer group that was separate from town
correct. that-
employees.
Right,
Yes.
it wasn't the
Yes.
town doing it. The town was not responsible for the newsletter.
No, I understand that, but it's.
But I think that's what you're asking me for. And the reason why.
The crowd will get a chance to talk.
No,
now. Just- we
and
need to hash this out.
And maybe if they have a better answer than I do, but what I've been led to believe is that the 501, when the corporation was not created, and the nonprofit was not created because of controversy. It was created because when the new people came in, and maybe it was Robin and Michelle, when they came into this, in order to conduct a legal business entity, like to have a bank account, Brentwood Newsletter, so that when the town would pay, it would say Brentwood Newsletter, well, you need to have an EIN number. Like this, I think maybe the Patriot Act, things like that changed. You can't just have a private account. So in order to have an EIN, you have to have some sort of legal entity. And the decision was made in 2019 to become a New Hampshire nonprofit 501c3. And the work was completed sometime in 2020. That's when it became a 501c3. And then we went further to become a New Hampshire charitable trust. And that was a 2-year process, mostly because of COVID, but that was completed in August of 2023. But I think that was all done because the town,
You'll get a chance to speak.
and I think the alternative, I don't know how you'd write a check, how the town would pay for the printing. Like, you have to write.
Karen looks like she would like to speak
But-
to this. I believe the check used to be written to an individual, correct?
Yeah, and
Back in the day?
I think the check was always written to the newsletter. We used to get a handwritten note asking us to release the funds when Marion O'Connell
So it was
the
written to
treasurer.
but the newsletter wasn't an entity in and of itself. It was just, that's how the check was written.
Correct. So
I mean, I think these are kind of details. I guess what I want this board to think about is the best thing to do to have a true town newsletter? Because to me, those are the two deciding points is, do we have a true taxpayer-funded newsletter, or do we have a separate organization that we are contracting with? And I think that some of the concerns that this board had with the MOU last time was the fact that with the BNL being a separate company with its own governing board, the town really doesn't have much control other than, per your guidelines here, pulling funding after problematic additions come out, which is not nothing. But I just wonder if so much of what I read in here, like, why would we adjudicate controversies at the select board for a private 501c3 company? It doesn't make business sense.
I just want it to be public. I want it to be public because I think.
But if our customers have a disagreement with Comcast, we don't air that out.
I think we just want to have a mediator who is truly independent of us. And I think where you are paying for the printing and the distribution costs of the newsletter, so I think it gives it the opportunity for us to document. That's why I said I thought maybe the select board was the right place, because then at the end of a quarter you can just say, were there any complaints this month documented? Or you could say it to Karen and we'd go, no, there were no complaints documented. I really believe that if you go down this path of trying to just do a town, because there are towns, communities, municipalities that send out a letter, but it's strictly just town, and I think that's for a good reason.
I think that's up to us. As
No, I don't.
town,
Well,
what we want.
again, you could. I think, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think you'd be printing a summer dining guide, resident volunteer profiles, creative stories and poems from our residents, or any material that comes from someone who's not a town employee, you know. And I mean, I just think you're running a risk, and I'm missing the point of like, what in the last 18 months has shown that you wouldn't trust these people
No,
who
that's
are on
not
the
what I'm
board.
saying, Jim.
And the board is open
I'm
to
not
anybody in our community. Like, if you want to be an editorial reviewer, all you have to do is volunteer. That's how that's how it
I totally get what you're saying. This is not about content at this point. It's about sort of the business aspect of it.
Okay.
And if you're feeling that publishing those things would put the town at some sort of risk, how is that any different for us being the sole funder? Isn't that the
because
same
you're
as-
not, because if you look at this agreement, you're not responsible for it.
But we're paying for it.
No, but first of all, the legislative body voted to expend the
Yeah, I
money for
understand
it,
that.
right? So, but I'm just saying that if we go to a town newsletter, I don't think it's going to look like the Brentwood newsletter. It will not. I think the Brentwood newsletter will cease to exist if the town takes it over.
Why?
And again, some of this was based on feedback that I got from, I thought, the previous select board, because I think it was in private session. I was not there, but I thought the town lawyer, had a problem with the town trying to either dictate or legislate or contract the conditions regarding content in the newsletter.
Correct. Yeah. our
So what
legal
this
counsel
does
told
is
us
it says
we couldn't-
you
that these are not
you don't need to, unless you tell me tonight, I think you should change section A to this or add this to section A. Then we can talk about that. But it takes you completely out of that. But you have faith and trust in me and the Brentwood newsletter, that as long as we have a signed agreement between the two of us, we are going to always abide by Section A. All of the material that comes to us will abide by Section A. And you get that without having to have the town be responsible for it at all.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
So
other-
again, I just feel like that the number one thing is that I believe if you turn this into a town thing, the Brentwood newsletter is going to cease to exist as we know it today.
So can you explain why? Because what I'm hearing Jen say and what I would be interested in is having some version of a newsletter committee that it basically is like the editorial board that you're talking about. It could even have a lot of the same people be under the town. And so we don't have to write a check to anybody because the printer would just get paid like any other bill. So I guess could you explain how that in your mind would kill the newsletter if it's literally all the same people doing all the same things?
Well, how would it be the same? How do we know it would be the same people? How would these people be put there? Like today, the people who are chosen are based on them volunteering
The same way
and
that you're
doing work.
asking us to trust you, are you saying that you wouldn't trust us?
Well, no, but I'm not. I'm just. I haven't heard or seen how this new newsletter group would be, appointed,
Is that what you're
staffed,
talking
or
about,
what they
Jen?
would be
Like, you're not
responsible
saying
for.
that Karen would have a newsletter.
No, I'm saying the Brentwood newsletter would be the Brentwood Town newsletter. And instead of being a separate organization, when I read in here, you're willing to do all the things that we had been hoping for in a town newsletter. And you're willing to have the town involved and the select board involved and the town moderator. So when I read this, it looked like a town newsletter. And I feel like it would fix so many of the problems. We wouldn't even need this.
If you wanted to have a committee that did the liaison work, I think that's a great idea. Go ahead. So in other words, for that liaison part, if there's ever a complaint or somebody doesn't like something that's printed, go ahead,
What
have it as
Letty's
that group.
asking is, what would be the downside at this point of the Brentwood newsletter as it looks now on the yellow paper becoming a true town newsletter? Because if you're asking for it to be town funded, it would be town funded. It could have a lot of the same content. I think it's up to us as a community what we want to see in our newsletter. And I like the articles about the town happenings, and I don't see why the town couldn't publish graduates and obituaries. So I have to argue with you. I don't think we would have editorials and things like that because it would be coming from the town.
So
But
in
we
other
could
words,
talk about it.
when I wrote my piece saying that I felt it was not proper for this board to use ARPA funds for one-time revenue sources for recurring expenses like salaries, would you have printed that?
I would have.
Why not?
If you wrote that as
you
an
weren't-
individual
If
citizen.
you weren't maligning anyone.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what I'm saying.
I mean, again,
If you want it to
I'm
be
just,
a
I'm just
town
being this
newsletter, let's do
hypothetical
it.
because this, like I said, I was under the impression, and I don't know why the town would want to take something like this on when you already have the largest volunteer organization in the town that's existed for now, it's on its 48th year. Never had any problems up until a small period of time that we've shown now with this, we've been able to get past that we want to throw that all away and say that the only way this is going to work is if we
and this
make
is
it
why-
an actual town
So
entity.
this is why I don't understand, because I'm not proposing that we throw anything away.
Okay.
I'm proposing that we give you more, right? Now, so like one of the things you said, well, you might run out of space. If it's a town newsletter, you're not going to run out of space because we'll just add another page.
No. Our space limitation is not us, it's the post office. So when you fold it, they have a limitation on how big a thing can be when we mail it.
We will let the people talk. I mean, it's important for you to hear what all the select board members feel too, so that when you comment, you can make comments about the whole situation. So I think that the public should hear these debates happen first before we invite you to weigh in.
So I guess that's my confusion, is that what I'm hearing you saying is that you feel as though bringing it under the town is somehow canceling out all of the other things. And that is,
Well, I think it will. I think your lawyer's going to tell you don't want to do this. I think that you're going to. The lawyer had told this board that they should not attempt to directly control content of the newsletter
Right,
outside
because
of
you're
your
a
own
private
submissions.
company.
so
What's
my
that?
understanding.
Because it was a private company with its own governing board. That's what the lawyer told us. That a town cannot tell a private newsletter what to do editorially. That what we're talking about is just bring that under the town, which would fix all these problems. The issue, the legal issue was our legal counsel did not feel that an MOU or MOA was really legally enforceable because you're a private group with your own board. You can make your own decisions.
The final thing, all I can add on this, and then maybe you could open it up to them, because I think the only thing I can add is that one thing I heard was people are sick of, they didn't want politics in the newsletter. And I feel like that as a nonprofit organization in town, we can be a apolitical group. I think that's where some of the problems started happening, is that the newsletter started dabbling into politics when it shouldn't have. That's my opinion, not anybody else's. And I think if you do it and you move this under the town, it becomes completely political, because I don't know, again, you're talking about either someone has to be elected, and that's a political process, or they have to be appointed. That's a political process. So I just think that it becomes something at the whim of whoever is elected or whoever is on the board at the time who's approving appointments.
How is
and this
that
and
different from what you're proposing, though? Because whoever's on your board or
What I'm
whoever
saying
on
is,
this
what I'm
board-
saying is, let the Brentwood Newsletter Inc. organization, the nonprofit organization, the volunteer organization, do what they've always done. And all this does is it's putting in writing between the two of us an agreement that we will
Not
always
enforceable.
live up to that, or you don't have to
So,
pay.
for example, there's going to be a new board here next March. So even if this board were to agree, the next board might not. And the same thing is true of your board. When there's turnover, there's no guarantee. So like that is.
Well,
the
if we have a
same way-
signed agreement, I mean, an agreement's an agreement. So I mean, it's an agreement.
No.
I mean, it's sort of like
It's not enforceable in any way.
Well,
Why do you say that? Based on what? Based on
What does objectively reasonable mean?
Objectively reasonable is used in agreements all the time, Letty. What are you talking about? I mean, why wouldn't that be an enforceable agreement?
So
The only my
Objectively
understanding is the recourse
to
that we
who?
would have is if we felt something problematic was published, we would just refuse to pay.
But it sounds like
But
they think
that's-
we wouldn't be able to.
No, we would.
Yeah.
I mean, it
just said
says
we
right in
wouldn't.
here that,
Yeah, but
you
you said it's
know,
enforceable.
that they would only
I said
pay.
it's enforceable. If the content
Right.
isn't, if the standards aren't met,
Right, but my question is, who gets to decide what objectively reasonable satisfaction
The
is?
select board does,
right.
yeah.
yes.
So
Which is
it's-
the same as having it under the town, when the select board would decide.
I guess I
Yeah,
just
but there would
don't
have to be
see.
standards. I mean, the whole.
Of course
the
there
whole
would have to
point-
be
The whole
standards.
point of this is that there are standards in place. I mean,
And I think this is a great document. I really think you've listened to me, to so many of these people. I guess I'm just asking why we can't take it a step further and really make it a town publication. Because I really appreciate this. I think you're being completely earnest, and that this addresses so many problems that a few years ago didn't even seem to be on the table for discussion. So I really think this is a good document. Just reading it, it just seems to me like the intentionality was to be a town newsletter. And so why can't we do that? You know, no one here wants it to be political. That was the whole problem we had. We wanted it to be apolitical. And I guess I can't speak for future select boards, but to Letty's point, I don't think you can speak for future board members of yours.
Right.
no, but you can have policies in
Right.
place.
Sure.
I was going to say, that's what I was, yes, that's true.
Policies for a
This,
separate outside entity.
Yeah, they'll have their own internal policies as a board,
But
right?
as long as those policies are in place, then, presumably the select board will agree or not agree. I mean, the policies are in place. It's what the select board had wanted.
I wasn't on that select board, so.
I mean, the public had wanted some sort of a contract, and then the wrinkle had been that a lot of people, and when we had the open session at the rec, the majority of people, as it was tallied up at the select board by Ken Christensen, had wanted some sort of content moderation or contract. So, and I really appreciate this, and I'm curious to hear what my other board members think. I just wanted to put it out there that if we really wanted it to be a town entity, I don't see any drawback to that. And I think it would we wouldn't have to have this. We could have this as
So-
town policies, and these would be fixed.
Could I ask, so in your mind, if we're doing that, how would that be administered? Like, who would oversee that? Like, obviously,
I
yes, it's the
think-
select board that approves the checks, but
Yeah, I think we would have to figure that out. I mean, I think to your point, it's a volunteer group of people, just like
Absolutely.
our energy and efficiency committee is a volunteer group of people, just like community.
no, they were appointed and you.
But
you-
they're
These,
volunteers.
what I'm talking, yeah, but what I'm talking about is people, we had, I think, we must have over 120 volunteers now, right? Including people who do submissions, but
And we have people who volunteer to do things in town who aren't part of an appointed committee. There would be no reason why you couldn't still have those same 100 people help. It just would be a true town-funded newsletter. I feel like that's what I felt like.
yeah, but
this was lending
I'm mixing
itself
up because you're saying funding, but like, I'm funding is paying when I bring in June in 2 weeks the invoice for the first quarter, you're gonna write a check. Isn't funding. Isn't that transaction of like money? I mean, funding. So,
So I
Yeah.
think.
but there is no
I
other
think
cost. I
that's-
don't.
Look, we can have discussions till we're blue in the face, and it's probably worth discussing, whether or not, it's worth putting under the structure of the town at some point in the future. But what's before us today is what the people voted on the warrant article, and, based on the proposal that the newsletter has put in front of us. So, I think that's a great discussion that we can have, moving forward, but that's not what's before us today.
I'm curious, John or Andy, do you have any comments that you want to share?
How many of the board of directors have changed since March of '22?
I don't know that. I know that's when I came on. I came on after that.
Have any of the board of directors changed since March of '22?
Me, I did.
Okay.
They added me at that
You're not
because
actually listed on the corporation. I think you're,
I'm on the board of directors and I'm the editor. They then voted me the editor in chief. That was all done after. At the time that this
On the
was
Secretary of State's
at the
website,
time when this started to happen, I was nothing. I might have been a folder. And I've told you the story. Right? I called Robin and yelled at her on the phone for 15 minutes, and I apologized. And I apologized, Robin, for doing that. And based on that, the discussion that we had, I was invited to speak to them, and then they kind of asked if I would be willing to kind of speak to you on their behalf. Kind of, I think we jokingly said I was the director of customer satisfaction or something like that. And then based on our discussions, I mean, I wanted to help them. Because I've always really liked this since I first moved here, and I didn't want to lose this treasure that we have in Brentwood. Anyways, then based on how this worked, they elected me and put me on on the board of directors. So John, I know I was added after that. I don't know that. We definitely have added another editorial. Kathy Began was added as an editorial reviewer after I was, because I also got added.
I'm specifically talking about the board of directors.
Okay, so I was.
But there was no other change since March of 22?
No. Oh, again,
On the official board?
I was the folder and that was it.
Okay. But no one was removed since March of 22?
Removed.
Actually, some people.
Marion stepped down prior to.
So did Linda Rousseau, right?
Prior to, yeah, prior to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when the Brentwood newsletter published something that was incredibly offensive and set off the firestorm I'm sharing from my perspective.
And we talked a little
and
bit.
there has not been any change in terms of removal at that level. And
Well, I told you I don't know what you're not understanding.
Is it okay
You
to-
made me.
is it okay
They
to
made
finish
me.
my
Let him
sentence?
Okay.
finish his sentence,
I mean,
you can respond.
I'm just trying to finish my sentence, Jim.
Okay.
I mean, leadership requires making hard decisions, and that article set off a true firestorm.
Sure.
We have lost an incredible amount of trust, and I don't see any. This is a very nice document, and it is sincerely a good job. Like I mean that. But true leadership requires true change when things go truly wrong. And my perspective, as you asked my perspective, I don't see that true change. I see a very nice memorandum asking for money. That's my perspective.
The board heard loud and clear the complaints from this community, and based on that, they put me on the board of directors. I was not involved prior to that. They put me on the board of directors, and then based on some of the discussions I had with the board and the ideas that I had, the foundations of what we have tonight, they made me the editor. So to me, that shows that board had leadership. They wanted this to work. They made that change. They put me in charge. They didn't have to do that. They did that on their own, and I really thank them for that. I think that's what helped make this document possible. I think that's why for the last 18 months, we have all been happy with the Brentwood newsletter. And I think it's going to continue because of that, because of the processes that were put in place.
Would it be possible to hear from some other people, just because?
Yeah, I want to give Andy a chance to speak if he has anything to say.
Yep.
Andy, do you want to comment?
Sure. I like the document that they presented to us. The only thing I would change in that document was D of payment, because now we're in May, we're not really going to be doing 11 issues by the time, if this document was ever enacted. So that's my comment on the document. If we do want to make this a town function, there's a lot of work ahead. Like, we would have to create a subcommittee, we would have to appoint people to a subcommittee. And right now, the Brentwood newsletter already exists. So if they can abide by what they set forth, I think to me, it's kind of like not reinventing the wheel. There's something already in place. Do we really need to go out and do something townwide? Because it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take us time. And there's nothing that says that we can't use that time to work on it in the future. But I think the newsletter definitely put forth some effort to try to curtail the problems of the past, and that's my thought.
Can I just ask on section D, Andy, what was the specific, because that's directly from the warrant.
Yeah, but now we're into May. You're not gonna produce 11 issues before March of next year.
I think, yeah, no, we will. Because we're just issuing, June goes to the printer on Friday, so that's 3, and that's why I'll be coming for the first payment for the first quarter. So I think, like I said, I believe this is accurate. It's exactly.
Andy, they're asking to be paid after the fact, essentially.
That's what the amended warrant stated.
Okay, so you're looking to get paid from March to now.
Correct.
Okay. I would.
Actually, it's April, May, June. I believe it's April, May, June is how it works. The April, May, and June editions. Those would be the first 3. That's how.
Any other board members have comments or questions before
I
we
mean, I
allow
might
some
have
public
more
comment?
after public comment.
Is he saying something?
No, I think, Andy, you're good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we will allow the public to come up and comment. And like I said, I think there's a lot of people who would like to comment, so we'll try to keep it relatively brief. So Jim, maybe if you can just, or you can move aside or bring up another chair, whatever you want to do. And we will have people come up and let us know their thoughts about this. And whoever wants to come up first, looks like it's Lois. Don't forget to give your name and your street address.
That's Lois.
I think I'm famous, notorious, or otherwise.
Well, you still got to do it technically, right?
Okay, Lois DeYoung,
Have a seat, Lois.
Crawley Falls Road. Now, I'm in town this year 50 years. And 2 years after I moved here, we started the Brentwood newsletter. Linda Rousseau was the editor.
Yep.
And we worked, town residents, we met in houses of 4 or 5 of them, absolutely 100% community.
Yep.
We put it together, and each month for a while, they went to different homes. That's how it went for the first few years. And understand that went from 1976, I think, to, when did they tell me that
The corporation was formed in 2020.
Right. That was how many years?
A lot.
A lot. Most of it, 99% of it. All done by that, all done by volunteers, all done by Linda Rousseau. And, now my story's complete, my date's complete. So then, at one point, the select board told us that for liability reasons and several other things, that it should, the select board told us to incorporate, to do what we did, become the Brentwood newsletter and incorporate. That was not something that, as my recollection, and that, that was a few years ago, that wasn't something we came up on our own. Linda had to start getting it done. I don't know, at that point, I wasn't terribly active in the, when they transferred over to Robin. Those days, we thought it was great if we did 3 or 4 pages. And when the board said, the selectmen said that for liability reasons, because technically the board could, the town could be sued by us, this kind of thing, that it needed to be incorporated to make it, to eliminate the liability, LLC, Limited Liability Corporation. Then, and eventually, now it's been how many, almost 40 years or what, 30 years, whatever she was in there, Linda wanted to step down. And they hired, or they didn't hire, she volunteered, or I don't even know how she got there. But anyway, she became the editor. She took that newsletter, and Linda will tell you this herself. She expanded it. She did hours and hours more about what to put in content. Expanded, it became a truly community. Meanwhile, as this room is only a small portion of, we all still went and folded once a month, the last Wednesday of the month for the last, in my case, 47 years. We liked doing that. That was a community event. First we met in here, then now we're meeting other places. It was 100% community. It was the Brentwood newsletter. It isn't anything what you had said about not being a community. It is community.
Oh, and just to clarify, I understand that 100%. It's always been a volunteer group of people.
But it's all community, a very large part of the community.
Yep.
Old town and New Town and everything else.
Yep.
And it's what it is. and there's no reason to change that. We like having it come. How many towns, we're the only one, where that newsletter comes to your house every month in the mail, and that brings us to the next point. In the mail, all this board is paying for is the postage and the folding. I mean, the postage and the printing. They still raise their own money. They have cards situated. A lot of funds and even volunteer money, other money goes into that newsletter. You don't have, the town does not, doesn't fund everything it's only a very, very, if we were paying a real newsletter and had an editor who got paid, you're talking $50,000 and $60,000 a year. And that's the kind of time that is put in to that newsletter to prepare it, and the volunteers. And we love doing it. We love being a part of that. Is our town. We had one incident. It's unfortunate. It happened. It was two things were printed in two different articles that caused a major to-do. But it's over. It's past. And now with this, they worked, the board, they're still volunteers. Nobody makes a dime. And goodness knows it's worth, if you were paying for it. It is very well done, it's well researched, it's well set up. You would have a very hard time not doing it. And not only that, but you would have it'd be a lot more money. The money would quadruple.
Your time's up, so do you have any concluding comments?
My only bottom line is, this is the right thing for the town, and please don't change it. They went the mile. You people now have to let the newsletter go back. We want to go back to being our newsletter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are you going to time or you want me to? Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Michelle Student, Middle Road. I'll try to get this all in 3 minutes, but I'm going to ask some questions. So, John, you have a problem with the leadership. What would be your answer for that?
It's not my entity to make changes to. I just think that when there's something that causes a lot of strife, that it is incumbent upon the leaders of that organization to really make serious changes.
Well, I'm not sure. I think what you want is for certain people to be removed. Is that what you want?
I was asked what my perspective was, and I'm trying to be honest and open and transparent with what my perspective is. My perspective is an organization collectively made some decisions that caused quite a few problems in town, and here we still are 3 years later trying to hash it out.
Well, I think that the Brentwood newsletter has made every effort to rectify the situation as best they could. We can't undo or unprint things, but the implication that somebody who is still there, still volunteering after getting beat up for years, the thought that you think those people should, I think that's absurd. You said something about trust. You said you have a lack of trust. Well, that goes both ways. And that's why we have this document, because we're trying to extend that olive branch. And I think it would be responsible for you all to do the same thing. That's what the town has voted for. Regarding a contract, the town did not vote for that. The town voted against that. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I didn't say that the vote was for that.
remember.
I said that when we had that session at the rec and when there was the tallying of the comments, per Ken Christensen, the chair at that time, the majority of respondents had wanted some sort of editorial control.
Yes, but the town, at town meeting,
Correct.
did not support
very
a
aware of that.
contract.
Yep.
And you said you think it should be under the control of the town. What does that look like to you specifically?
To me, and that's why I wasn't really understanding Jim feeling like it would destroy the newsletter. To me, it was the newsletter looking very similar to it does now, but probably without an editorial section because it would be coming from the town, not from a specific editor. And most of the content would be identical, and then we would decide as a town what we wanted to have for letters and things like that, because that had been a little bit more of a sticking point with some people. But to me, I was just being honest. I appreciate this document deeply. It's a lot of things that didn't seem possible a couple of years ago that are now in front of us. It just seemed to me that it was pointing us in the direction of making this a true town newsletter. And so that's why I was suggesting, could we take it one step further than this and just bring the newsletter under the town, and then the funding becomes automatic. So I'm not trying to be negative or controversial or say that I don't think this document is really good. I do, but when I read it, especially having the select board be the place where we hash out disagreements, that just doesn't make like business sense to me. It seems like we should take this great group of volunteers and sort of bring them under the town because they're providing a service for the town. That was what I was trying to say with my comments.
So I don't think that that document says that the select board hashes anything out. I think the
It says
whole,
it would be at our meeting.
the whole point was you would have somebody else outside of this
Sure.
room, so you didn't have a recreation of what happened a couple years ago with your board
But I
meetings
believe
inundated.
the intentionality was for that to occur at a select board meeting in live public. That's how I'm interpreting B, section B. where
I don't have
says
it in front of me, but
documented as part of the select board's general meeting minutes.
documented. So whatever mediation took place between whoever that person, that liaison was chosen to be, that person, as I understood from our conversations, would come to the select board and just sort of report on this is what happened. That it wouldn't be a show like it had been done in the past. It was just this is what came up and this is how it got resolved.
Okay.
We were trying to avoid having
Okay.
the select meetings be that. So I'm still confused, I guess. So you want the town to have control, but you would want the same people to keep doing it, except maybe for John?
No,
Can you, that's really not fair.
it's not,
I don't understand
not get personal.
why you're doing that, but,
Well,
you know.
I mean, you asked if anybody was removed, so clearly you had
Not,
an anticipation that somebody should be removed. I'm not trying to be personal, I'm just repeating what you said.
Okay, when Boeing goes through massive problems, as we've seen, they do shakeups. When my companies in the past have gone through massive problems, they've gone through shakeups. The shakeups happen at the top. That's the board of directors. This was our version of a major problem, and a shakeup was warranted. I was asked my perspective. That was my perspective. So to single me out is really pretty unfair. I've been sitting at this table for 3 years dealing with this whole issue. And you know specifically that I've been yelled at in this room countless times over this particular issue. So it's to single me out, Michelle. Enough is enough.
We've sat on this side of the table for 3 years too, and we've gotten beat up, probably worse.
I don't think it's helpful for us to rehash.
No, and I don't want
the
to either. That's
old
why I was
stuff.
kind of
So if we can
disappointed that
just
even
put
got
that to
brought up.
rest.
That's what this whole,
Michelle, I think what I mean is when we first had some closed door meetings back 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago, when I would refer to the Brentwood newsletter as a private company, what you and Robin would say is, but we're a group of volunteers in the community. And I think my intentionality was, can we make it feel more like that? Like it's just an entity, like it's an offshoot of the town and it comes from the town. So the select board would be just basically helping to follow guidelines like this. Like, okay, and it would have, and therefore when it came out, it could be called the true like Brentwood funded newsletter. And I feel like that would be better for the town than having us outsource this to a separate group with its own leadership, because that leadership would then be in town. It could have the same volunteers. It could look the same. It could be on the same yellow paper. It would have almost a lot or maybe majority of the same content. To me, it feels like if we really kind of want to heal this and make this feel like this is a town newsletter, which it really is. It is a town newsletter.
always was.
Right, exactly. And I'm not arguing that at all. To me, it feels like if we could sort of go back to the olden days before there was that division between the town and the company, I feel like that would be healthier for the town. And I'm not trying to say that like I would personally tell you like you can't write this, you can't write this. These are great guidelines. They're perfect. No politics, no personal attacks, no endorsing candidates. It's all wonderful. And so I'm just wondering why we couldn't go a step further and bring it into the town. That's what I wanted to bring up. I brought it up to Jim, and I think it's worth discussing, but your board makes those decisions, right? Because right now you are your own entity. I'm not trying to be negative or be controversial. I'm just asking, why couldn't we make this feel more like a true town newsletter under the town.
So what, from your perspective, would change then? I mean, do you want to see every article that comes to us that
It
would
would
get
be-
printed?
yes, the
Because you
town-
obviously don't know how a newsletter works. There's a small time frame. There's not a whole lot of time.
All right, if
oh,
we're
it's
gonna go down this road, we should.
No, I'm
we're
trying to
like
understand
at
of what
8
her,
minutes.
she used the word control, and I'm trying to understand what she would intend from that.
It would be reviewed and approved by the town before going out. Therefore, it would be town approved. Just like right now, it's reviewed and approved by your board before going out. Instead of it being a private advisory board, it would be the town.
So a few minutes ago, you kind of said you didn't want all of that coming before the select board. So now you're saying you actually,
Oh, no, to clarify, if you're a private, separate entity, business entity, I don't think it makes sense for us to do the business at the select board. If it's a town offshoot, a town committee, of course it would happen at this board, like all other town committees do. That was the difference I was delineating. And I mean, I'm not saying that this would be like flip a switch. I'm saying like, I wanted to see if we could have this conversation about bringing it under the town, because I personally feel that would help us move forward. But you can feel free to disagree, and it appears that you do, and that's fine.
Can I
I respect
respond to
your
that,
opinion.
Jen, before the next speaker?
Sure, sure.
You know, I think there's been like comparisons that this is, like Comcast or some other, vendor. We're talking about the Brentwood newsletter. I mean, the whole idea here and the whole, point of this, document is that there's a partnership, a partnership between the newsletter and the town. And there's accountability, so that if that, doesn't work out, then, there's accountability for that. But the idea is that it's a partnership. It's not like, some cold contractual relationship between the town and
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Comcast. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's a
no.
that's a big difference.
I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can have the next person come up. Does Janice, Janice can speak as well. Anybody who wants to speak can speak. This is the open forum.
Laura Hager, Mohawk Lane.
Hi.
So I can actually answer your question.
Okay.
The reason it can't go under the town is because it would lose credibility. There is no way that as elected officials, you can be objective at deciding what goes into a town newsletter. And already you've taken control of a lot of things. You're taking control of board appointments. And I've heard talk in town that it's become very political. And I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying it's the nature of elected officials having control of information. So, like the chief has talked to Jim about doing an update for the town on the municipal complex. If it comes from an outside organization, the chief is putting it through. It's not a dog and pony show from your mouthpiece, right? It's going from the chief, sharing information through an outside organization. If it's going through you, it is literally just becomes your mouthpiece. And nobody wants that. There's not one person in this town who wants that. What they want is, they want the newsletter, what it is, done right. And I know, because I talk to people. I talk to people all over the place. Jim talks to people all over the place. And all he's heard when he talks to people is, we want this done right. We love the newsletter. We love getting the yellow newspaper. They're so excited when it comes. No one is going to be excited for a newsletter that is a mouthpiece for this board. And that's what it will become, whether it is in reality, whether it's specifically, but you can't decide, no, we're not going to put this, without the appearance of, we're controlling the information you receive. And that's why. And it has nothing to do with who pays the bill. I mean,
I hear what you're saying. I just wonder how that same exact situation doesn't apply to a Brentwood newsletter board. That then,
because they don't have they're not trying to fund a municipal complex. They're not trying to
Correct.
do whatever it is you're trying to do.
So if Jim was on that board, he still wouldn't be trying to fund anything.
On what board?
On the newsletter board, I think is what you're saying. Like if
I just feel like, yeah, I mean, any
They're separate. It's
board
the-
that oversees a newsletter is going to have control over the content.
Exactly.
And so
But they're
you're
not the
arguing
elected
that
people.
an outside unelected board would be more neutral than an elected board. I hear what you're saying. I
Absolutely.
don't personally agree,
But
I hear what you're
I mean, that's exactly how it works. I mean, you certainly do not have only what government tells you in the news. Like, it doesn't work. I think it's actually in our Constitution, right, if I have that right. Like, there is a separation, and I know that you're paying for it, but this is a newsletter. And if you want the newsletter to be a legitimate
And I think
newsletter.
That's the rub, right? We're paying for it. So
But you
if
have a
it-
history of paying
If
for
we
it.
want it to be information that that's not the town's mouthpiece, then it gets, I just personally still feel that it gets awkward that we're paying for it without editorial control. I hear what you're saying.
Except that the legislative board of the town, the people voted for it.
I hear
And so
that's a separate
they've already,
issue.
I mean, they've already approved it. The people, the taxpayers have said they want to pay for it. Now, what I can see that they're doing is they're trying to give you a way to make it work so that you can feel safe paying your contractor to do it. Just like you would pay, if your electrician came in, you would want to know they're going to do a good job. And you're going to pay them at the end if they do it. But you're not going to tell the guy how to do the wiring. You're not going to tell him which materials to buy. You're going to pay the contractor to do it. That's what this relationship is. It's a contractor that the elected people have approved to be the source of running the newsletter, and they're being as open and transparent as they can. And that's the answer. As you keep saying, why can't it come under? This is exactly the reason, because it would no longer be the Brentwood newsletter. It would no longer be an independent information coming from the people to the people. And you're just protected in knowing that they're following the guidelines that they presented to you.
Thank you for your comments. Next. Welcome.
Thank you. I heard that.
Guys, please just be, I mean, we're all neighbors. Like, let's all
I know
be
I'm
polite
not
to each
popular.
other.
My
It's
name
okay
is
to
Janice.
disagree.
My name is Janice Weers. I'm talking from the library's point of view. I am not a resident in this town, just to be transparent. And I know I'm not a popular person with some people, and that's okay. But my thought is, as a department head, as someone who receives town money to run the department that I do, there are a lot of oversights. I have to produce receipts. I have to have an audit. I have to prove every penny I ask for is a penny worth spending. And it's frustrating to have a group come in and say, well, it's only $18,000. But when I ask for $6,000, it's, oh, we can't spend $6,000. And I'm talking from my perspective, but I'm also talking from other town departments. We are under major scrutiny. And I think if the town is going to pay for this, that needs to come into account with this. The other thing is, if the town was as part of this, we could use this great new website that we have to put the newsletter on it. We could send newsletters out by email and then have people opt in for that physical yellow newsletter that they want. There are people that don't have access to digital pieces. I totally understand that. But there's also a lot of people that do. And I think we could reduce costs by utilizing some of those methods. So I'm not talking as a personal person other than from my department, and I hope that that's understood.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that if we were, at one time I believe there was a warrant that said, treat the Brentwood newsletter as part of the budget process, not a warrant, okay? So if we were part of the budget process, what she's saying is true. I would have sat before you showing you, this is how we estimated the $17,250 based on 11 issues, based on the average number of pages, based on the printer cost, based on the postage. Because all you're paying is the printing and the distribution costs, nothing else. And we run a tight ship. The volunteers make sure that this town doesn't have to pay for much of anything. I mean, we fold the newsletter, right?
Okay.
So anyways,
Let's
it's
let
not,
people
yeah,
talk.
but I just want to make sure we understand. If you wanted this to be as part of the budget process, I'd be happy to sit down with you and do
Being part of
that.
the budget process doesn't guarantee that this board will give you money.
That's okay.
Okay.
The
It would be no
legislative
different.
body voted to support it and give us the $17,000.
No, they
so-
voted to set it aside. It doesn't mean that we have to give it.
Correct. No, I'm.
But that wouldn't change even if you were part of the budget process.
Absolutely. Okay, I understand. Thanks.
Yep. Next comment? Have a seat.
Tracy Dakota, Middle Road. I'm the trustee. Treasurer. I don't know what my job is.
Something that starts with a T.
I'm a board of director, I'm the treasurer, okay? I don't get all in the minutia of putting it together. It's a lot of work. I don't want to do it. I do the money. The money is accurate. We only ask for what we need. We are not asking for anything more, and I'm very competent in what I do. I also am the treasurer on the Friends. I do the exact same thing, and I try to cut costs where we can. I try to offer alternatives to reduce rates. We do bulk rate. We have gone to our printer. We've asked for discounts. We've collaborated and tried to do this to the best of our ability at the most reasonable cost to the town, okay? So, and people have voted that they want it. We've done questions. They want it in print. They want it at their doorstep. They want it in the yellow paper, and they want it from us. So.
Thank you for your comments. Next. Hi, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Steve Dawson, One Lad Road, Brentwood. At the town meeting, I spoke against the funding of the newsletter with public dollars. I voted against it. But I am here to support basically the proposal that Jim has provided you, for now anyway. At that meeting, one thing we've mentioned in passing, but I think we need to emphasize a bit more, was that there was a vote of the town to fund the newsletter as the newsletter. And I fully realize that an appropriation by the town is not a directive. It's you may spend the monies. It's not a you must spend the money. So it's certainly within the select board's authority and responsibility to decide what monies should be spent responsibly how. But I do think the fact that the town voted significantly, now twice, to support the newsletter as a newsletter is important, and it's not nothing. So if we were to end up this discussion somehow in a way that didn't fund the newsletter as the warrant article was written, I think that there'd be a loss there. There'd be a loss of trust and some further division if that were the result. So I hope that's not the result. I hope there is a way to resolve this in a way that is consistent with how the town voted. I believe that we shouldn't think that this is the end of the world. You know, this is a one-year vote. Jim and the editorial board have suggested a process that does have controls. Everyone's agreed that it's a very sincere proposal. We get a chance for the next 9 months to see if it works. And we even have a 3-month period to see whether it works in terms of at any point the select board can decide not to fund because they object to some way in which the actual performance of the newsletter didn't comport with the agreement. So we have a chance to sort of see how this works and very quickly change it if it's not working. Jen, I think the arguments that I find very convincing, that if it were to be brought under the town as you suggested, it would be thank you. It would be a serious change in how the newsletter would work. It would have these folks who've been working independently, working for the town if they were the same ones to volunteer. I think it's valid to say that it would become more of an official publication. And so I think I would strongly suggest that we come to some way in which the vote of the town was acknowledged, and we try it out. And if it doesn't work, we do something different.
Thanks for comments. Next.
Betsy Ibbotson, Scrabble Road. Personally, I like the newsletter, but what I don't like was the article from a few years ago I still haven't heard anything from the Brentwood newsletter or their board explicitly apologizing to the residents of Brentwood for that, whatever it was, that racist truant. I got a call from Florida. It was on the national news. So I don't think this whole discussion is about money. I think very little of the discussion is about money. I think it is very political, and personally, I'd really like to hear an apology. I've heard the editor say, well, you know, that one little thing. I've heard a couple comments from from other people. Well, you know, that little thing was a really big thing. We made the national news. That's a really big thing. You know, you could have, no, just not to me, to the whole town of Brentwood. They need to hear, you know, we had major discussions and people are not happy about that. And there's a whole lot more to the newsletter than just that. I understand that. I do enjoy reading it. If I don't read it, I don't. It's not that big of a deal. But that was an extreme and embarrassment to this town.
It's what got me involved with newsletter.
But the people that are still involved, Jim.
Let's
they
not
will
go back and forth.
acknowledge that that's a
I
problem.
appreciate your
Go back and
comments. I think they were heard. Welcome.
Hi, Rob Wolfchuck, Peabody Drive. I'd like to echo some of the sentiments from the prior gentleman. I am generally against using taxpayer money for any of these outside companies, paying the charities. I don't think the government should decide where our money goes or what news that I read. But the town did vote to pay for the newsletter, and I think that while you don't have to, the residents have spoken, and you can make changes going forward or have other warrant articles. But for now, I think the people have spoken, and you should follow that.
Thank you for your comments.
So, Eric Turr, Peabody Drive. So I'm going to start off and say, as others have said, I love the newsletter. I value the newsletter. It's been one of the best things since I moved to this town 25 years ago. I'm glad to see what's going on here. I'm really glad to see an honest effort to get back to what I knew that newsletter to be back when I moved to this town. Jim and I have had multiple lengthy conversations toward this end, and I'm glad to see something coming out of it that puts us in the right direction. I just want to correct a couple of things. This controversy did not start in 2022. It started in 2019. I was the first person to come before this body because of something that was published that was really shocking to me at the moment. And I'll tell you, the newsletter wasn't a separate corporation back then. I didn't even realize the newsletter wasn't part of the town when I came before the board, and was kind of surprised to hear that it wasn't, and kind of disappointed, frankly, to hear that it wasn't. But that's fine. And I brought a document with me that night in 2019, and it was a set of standards, because I didn't feel it was fair to come before the select board and ask them to come up with standards on their own. Let's just say that was not warmly received, but it embodied almost everything that you have in your standards now. There was an attempt at a warrant article, which also said nothing other than standards. So I think this is really moving in the right direction. I wish we had done this in 2019, and this could have basically all been avoided. I will say, just as early as 2022, and the reason why I think it's important that there be something in writing, concrete, enforceable, just 2 years ago in 2022, we had received issues in the yellow paper when the town was in a dispute over this, advocating using the yellow paper and the insignia, that it is a separate organization. I trust the people that are saying that they want to do something better, but it's a separate organization. It can do whatever it wants, and that's how it should be. So I think it's important that something get ironed out. I think the amended warrant article that the amendments that Jim brought to the warrant article, the idea of being able to claw back money from the newsletter, that can't be done just by handshake. That's something that could get this town in a lot of trouble. If someone around this table decides that, well, I think you violated number 3 bullet, we're not going to pay. It would be nice if there was something to fall back on other than a handshake. I've talked to Jim about the. Oh, sorry. Can I say
Just
one
finish
more
up,
thing?
Yep.
I personally would love to see it be a committee of the town, but frankly, I don't care. But there are a couple of things in this agreement that I'd love to see that I've talked to Jim about that would happen if it was part of it. Everything would be public. All the communications would be open to 91A. We could know what was submitted versus what was published. The board meetings would be open. All the meetings would be open. We'd all be able to see how the newsletter's being produced. I don't care whether or not that's in a committee, or maybe this agreement could be modified so that those are some of the things that could happen. I mean, voluntarily, I'd love to see that be the case. There's a bunch of other things that I think would also come, but frankly, the issue is to restore trust, we need to do more than sort of just promise. We need to basically be able to see what's going on behind the scenes, and that's all we started with back in 2019, was just basically saying this should be an open process. I'll end with saying we're speculating a lot about what's legal and what's possible and a lot of things. I hope that you all will take this agreement and some of the comments to the town's council and have them weigh in on what is and is not possible so that you can make a real decision rather than a speculative one. Thanks.
More comments? Come on up. And just to make one clarification, I do think that this document is different. Before, it was a lump sum payment in advance for 12 issues. And that's what town council said. Once you write that check, you can't tell this private company what to do. They could turn around, take your money, and do whatever they want, and you have no recourse. So this situation is different, and I completely acknowledge that. So some of the comments about town council would be different about this document, because this is a different document, just to clarify that. Go ahead.
Good evening, Doug Finnan, Gove Road. I just want to express my support for funding the Brentwood newsletter. Moving forward over the past year, I believe the Brentwood newsletter has demonstrated that they can work in the parameters of the guidelines of the Select Board. The Brentwood newsletter appears to have met or exceeded all the Select Board's requirements in their new proposal/contract. The residents have voted and passed for the warrant for the funding of the Brentwood newsletter. By funding the newsletter, overall, I think it would show to the voters that our elected officials are willing to listen to the residents and give it a chance one more time. And it may even bring a little more cohesiveness over this decision of passing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? Hi.
Hi, Leslie Kleinman, 12 Diane McCain. Just like everybody's been saying, just because the town voted for it doesn't mean you have to pay for it. But I think that would cause a lot of division. If you're trying to bring the town together, I just think everybody's going to be very unhappy if you don't. And the fact that you're not paying for it until they've already printed it, it's not like it's a surprise. So I think you need to try to bring the trust back and try to unite the town and the newsletter. If it doesn't work out, then you can just change your mind and say, no, I don't want to fund it anymore. You know, it's simple. And like you said, if people on this board might not be here next year and the people on that board might not be there, if you have that document and they go by those guidelines, it doesn't matter who's in those positions. They have to follow those guidelines. So I think I support you, please, giving them a chance.
Thanks for coming. Anyone else interested in speaking? Come on up.
Julie Avant, Bartlett Road. I wasn't planning on speaking for the Brentwood newsletter. I'm on the board. I'm on the board because I was asked to help out before any of this craziness happened. I don't like controversy. I don't like division. What I saw in this nice little town that I have grown to love was disheartening. And I like to come to the middle. And what I've seen, I'm kind of a quiet member of the board, but what I've seen from this board is an effort to come to the middle. And there have been many discussions, and one of them was a change of the editor. So there was a change within the board. So I don't really see the necessity to bring it into the town. I think so much work has been done by the board in talking with townspeople, and it's really a concerted effort to come together. And hopefully the select board will come and we can have an agreement, and then understanding that we're all trying to do the best we can for the town. So
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we will stop that comment at 8:44. Board member comments or final discussion before we make some decisions?
Yeah, I guess it's very clear that there's a lack of trust on all of the sides of this issue.
I think it's better, but yes, I think
Yep.
there's still
So
some
there
historical hurt
there
there.
are people on both sides, not everyone, obviously. And I guess I'm wondering if there is some way that we can try to trust each other just for a little while in some sort of really well-defined way. And if that doesn't work for whatever reason, then we reevaluate and go back to the way it was, or figure out a different way to go forward. Because I'm not sure how we get past the trust problem.
I do think that it's really important that we recognize this is a town of 5,000 people, a lot of whom voted at our most recent town election, who weren't at town meeting. And also, we represent the whole town, not a small handful of people. And I just think that we have to hold on to that thought as we are continuing to think this through and make these decisions, because I think that there are some expectations from the whole town. That's my
Right,
perspective.
so I guess I am a problem-solving type person, so like, why can't we try to have a newsletter committee under the town that exists or consists of the existing board members?
It sounds like that's not something that they're interested in. I mean,
we haven't officially off, but like, you know what I mean? Like, so why, like, or like Andy was saying, why don't we work towards transitioning, right? Like, where the Brentwood newsletter.
well,
I don't think I'm hearing a lot of willingness.
over the last hour and a half, I've heard your olive branch. I've heard an olive branch from my perspective being offered from you and Jen, and I've heard that be kind of not interesting from
I mean, I
the
guess
other side.
we have, I mean, I haven't been as explicit as I just was. I was just pretty explicit. If the select board were to decide, okay, we want to try to do this under the town, because we don't know if it's going to work. We want you to trust us to see if we can do this. We want to trust you that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Why can't we try that? If we were to say, we're going to appoint your board as the newsletter committee.
Can I respond to that?
No,
I can't?
I think she's asking
I'm
Jim
asking
first.
them.
Yeah, I think she's asking Jim. You can weigh in after, but yeah, I think she's asking a question to Jim.
Because I truly don't understand. And I understand that for you and for a lot of these other people, it goes back a long way. I'm not asking to look at going back a long way. I'm asking to look at right now. The people of Brentwood would like a newsletter. We would like to fund a newsletter. Using this, like having the same people do it, right? The same group of volunteers, the same everything.
It's the warrant, the people voted for the Brentwood Newsletter, Inc. The people want, the Brentwood Newsletter is the largest community volunteer organization in town. And I am confused, because maybe you need to put something in writing then, because I am really confused what you mean by bring the Brentwood Newsletter Inc., the community
Not the-
volunteer
I'm sorry,
organization
nope.
under the town.
Nope.
I don't know what that
Okay,
means.
so let me clarify. I'm saying starting July 1st to the end of December, the town of Brentwood would like to have a newsletter committee. We would like to appoint the board of the Brentwood newsletter to staff that committee.
Not necessary. I don't know why I would consider that. I don't think it's necessary at all to you have 18 months in front of you showing that this works. 18 months that this
I'm not
works.
saying that it's
So,
necessary. I'm saying
and all
why
of this was
won't-
based on
why won't you
mistakes
try?
that were made and have been corrected. And it sounds like you want to throw away 48 years
I absolutely
because of
do
one
not.
year of mess or a couple of years of messing up. And if somebody wants an apology, I apologize on behalf of the Brentwood newsletter for printing the I guess it was the racism article. I was just as upset about it. It is the article that I called Robin about. That is how I got to be on the board of directors, and I believe it's what led me to be the editor. So I apologize to the entire community for that, and I wish it never happened, but it did. And I think maybe part of this all happened so that we could get to where we are today. Have a newsletter that we all love and we all cherish, but that we have it in writing so that, as everyone has said, it doesn't matter whether Jim Hager moves on to somewhere else or this board all gets thrown out and reelected by somebody else. That agreement still is in place, and the agreement goes beyond the individuals.
Although, of course, the agreement would be 1 year at a time and would be subject to
Sure.
review by every board every
Sure,
year, of course.
because maybe we learn as we go along, and maybe this, and again, I never meant the select board to be involved with that mediation process. I just thought that if there was ever a complaint,
No, I
it would be
understand that.
documented here, and I thought that maybe that would be something, if there was a complaint or something that came up that we learned from it, that we together would say, let's modify section A, because I think this happened because if we would have better worded number 5, or if we would have added number 6. It could be like a living document, but I think that's what MOAs and MOUs between entities, that's how they work, so.
Yep. I hear you. I think I'm with Letty that my preference would really be to bring it under the town. That being said, this is so much of what we asked for that when we first asked for it, we were told absolutely no. So to go from absolutely no to have this in front of us in a 2-year period or something, I give credit to your organization for that. And I do appreciate the way you modified the warrant, because I think what this board historically at our last vote did not feel comfortable with is handing over $17,000 to you and being like, hope the next 12 months goes okay, because we just paid you in advance.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I do think that was a very smart change that you made, and the fact that the payment would be after review of the additions that came out. So I want to be clear that I read this and was like, wow, I'm impressed with this. This had things in it I was surprised that you guys agreed to. And I am very, very happy and very impressed that your board has made that much of a change in just a couple of years. And so I'm not opposed to this. I really just do want to say, I do firmly believe that if this is a town newsletter that's town funded for the town, I really think at some point we should find a way to make it accountable to the town. And I feel strongly about that. But I appreciate all the comments, and I know that the voters appreciate this newsletter, and I'm happy with the changes that you've made. But I hope that maybe while we're hearing you, I hope maybe you're hearing us a little bit, and maybe we could continue some of these conversations about why couldn't this be under the town in a healthy way? Because I really think, and I know some people don't agree, and you're welcome to not agree, but I just wonder if you
I'm
feel
open
like
to
you have
conversations
any
with you going
openness
forward.
to continue that conversation over time.
Sure.
About if there's a way we could make that work, because it takes all liability off the table, all monetary issues off the table. I think it would just make things so much more clear. And it wouldn't have to be an agreement between two parties. It would be a town working with a volunteer organization, which to me feels healthier and feels like a better business decision. And so I do feel that way, but I do want to give you credit that these are the things that the public asked for, that I asked for, that the board asked for, and I am impressed with this document. And I'll kind of leave it at that, that if there's,
Thank you.
I would hope if we're going to have some trust in you, that you might have some trust in us.
I do.
That my intentions to bring this under the town is not to wreck the newsletter or make it like a Jen Jones mouthpiece. Like, I don't want that at all. I don't want any politics in it. My politics maybe aren't the same as yours. It's nobody's business in town.
Right.
It shouldn't be in the newsletter.
Right.
So I just hope maybe you might give us that same grace and that same listening as we've been listening to you and your supporters for why we feel that it might really be more healthy down the road to have this come into the town.
I am definitely open to have conversation with you. If you want to hear more about, I can go through how it works, some behind the scenes, how it works and what we're doing, how we review it.
Yeah, and to Eric's point, 91A rules,
Yeah,
openness.
the only, and I'm okay with that. The
under
only
the
thing
town.
I'm nervous about, and the reason why this, like I said, with the, like a liaison, I wouldn't want to bring everything to public, because I feel like there have been cases where people have submitted something that we had to tell them we can't print it. And when we tell them why, I just feel that maybe they wouldn't want everybody to see that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was something that they thought that they felt strongly about. And then when we said, well, it isn't really Brentwood related.
I understand that.
That like, in other
And
words,
remember that
in other words,
91A allows a reputation
that's all.
exemption for non-public discussion.
But if somebody wants to see firsthand what it's like to review the Brentwood newsletter, I'd be happy to review the next one with you if you want. I mean, it's.
No, I'm not asking for
And
that.
like I
It's
said,
just-
I'm being honest with you, it has gotten much, much easier. I think as word got out there that, because we've been living by that Section 8, we've been living by that for 18 months. It got a lot easier.
Yeah, I hear you.
It got
It's just,
a lot easier.
this whole crowd has been giving us a ton of friction, and I personally don't really understand that, because I'm saying, yeah, let's find a way to make this work. Let's collaborate. Let's make it even more into the town. So I would just appreciate if people could tone down the negativity a little bit and hear us from where we're coming from, and that we.
Well, if I was
wanna
being
make this
negative, I'm
work.
sorry.
No. I just think that if we're going to meet you halfway, we'd love for you to kind of listen to us and assume good intent on our part. Because when I sent you that email asking if this could come under the town, it's only good intent. There's no ulterior motive. I'm not going to be on this board forever. It has nothing to do with me.
No.
I think it's best for the town. So if we could keep those lines of communication
Right.
open,
Sure.
I think that would be best.
Always.
Because we could always change things. And if this doesn't work, there may be a time this board will vote to pull funding.
Right.
And I really, really hope that we wouldn't have to do that, because
same.
and I'd love if we could just get to a point
Same.
where that wasn't even on the table.
Same.
Because it's not healthy for us to have to do that.
Totally agree.
So that, to me, would be one advantage of it being onto the town. The select board would never, ever, 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 ever have to pull funding, because they would have blessed it before it went out, and it was all good, and there'd be no less opportunities to fight, which I think is.
Why don't we talk more about
we
that
could- that would
statement
just
you
be
just
my
made
request,
about
that you
blessing
kind
it before it goes
hear
out?
us.
I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that
Okay.
more in
Okay,
detail.
thanks. Other comments from board members? Andy, do you want to say anything after the discussion and public comment? Okay. Anyone else? Paul, did you want to respond?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd just respond to John's point about looking out for the 5,000 members of the town is that, look, the legislative body is who spoke at town meeting. That's what we live by. And that was the vote. So, I don't want to be in a position of denying the vote. I just think that's bad precedent. So, I understand we're looking out for 5,000 people, but we're also looking out for what happened at the town meeting and what the legislative body voted.
Yep, I hear you. Yeah, I respect that vote. And and we are the fiduciary agents of the town. So every single warrant that is voted on comes to us to enact it. And so that's what this discussion is about tonight, is how do we feel comfortable enacting it under our roles? Okay. Any other comments?
I'd,
Sorry.
sorry. I didn't know you were commenting. Go ahead.
Look, after the article, I was sitting on this board, and when Russ was here, Russ said, and at this table, he said, okay, you know, I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm going to give you one more chance to not mess this up. And he was doing it reluctantly. And we had more problems. So I've been in this seat for too long and having sorry.
Can you let John speak? It's okay if you don't agree. Just let John speak. He's allowed to speak.
So I've been sitting in this chair for too long, dealing with the same issue for too long. Kind of continually being asked, trust me, trust us, trust us, trust us, we've changed. And Jim, it's a good document, and you seem sincere. It's just too much. So like we can, I would consider reluctantly supporting the discussion that what Letty was specifically talking about. I do think that the town having a newsletter is a good and positive and healthy thing. But with this vehicle, it is just not what is in the best interest of our town, is my final comments.
Paul, did you want to say one last thing?
No, I mean, I think we're at a point where we should move the question.
Sure.
What is the question?
We need a motion.
Well,
Oh, so somebody has to make a motion.
yeah, I mean,
If they want to, that's the next step.
I mean, motion to make the expenditures as set forth in the submission that Mr. Hurjar has provided to the board.
So we have a motion on the table, I'm assuming specifically to accept and sign this statement.
Correct.
That's
And-
what
and to make
the vote would be about.
Right, and to make the expenditures as set forth in D, and for the first 3 issues that have been published. I mean, that's basically consistent with what the memorandum provides.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion before you vote? No? Any?
Just that we haven't gotten 3 issues yet. So we wouldn't pay them until after June, right?
Correct. Yeah, if this were to be followed, there wouldn't be payment until the 3rd issue came out, which is coming out next month.
Next week.
Correct?
Next week.
Next week.
Well, yeah, well,
next month.
printer on Friday, so yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
like
early
probably the
June.
next meeting or second
Yep.
meeting after that.
Yep, okay. Other questions or final comments before we take a vote? The thing I'm going to say, no, we closed public comment. I think we've heard everybody's thoughts. I'm going to be honest, I'm with John in that I'm a little nervous about this, and I am willing to try. And the reason I'm willing to try is because of the way this is written, which is that if there are any problems or we feel that this is not being upheld, we will not pay you. So as long as you understand that, and we're not going to have people in here
Absolutely.
screaming at us because that would be our prerogative.
I can't control.
Promise you
Never.
that
Well, I know they will.
promise
but
you
I'm
that
just
that
saying it.
is going to happen.
I know. I'm just telling you.
Well,
that's why I don't.
It's
want
because
to
I
take it
trust
away.
I trust you that
I
there's not
hear you.
that you're not going to make up something. You know, I trust you.
Yeah.
That we're not.
But it's just
Yes.
the reason I'm not in favor of this, I think I
Absolutely.
said before, is because it just keeps this going. This are we okay? Are we okay? Should we vote? Or is somebody mad about something? And so I really feel
That's exactly what.
that's what this will do. I know. This is why I wanted to
So
come under
I
the
just-
town.
So let's
But I
not
think
do
we
it.
need to do something, and I do. And this is, I'm shocked to see some of these things in here. This is what we asked for
You've
before.
given them an option.
I
You've
hear that.
given it to them.
Yep,
They have that option.
I know.
So I just want to clarify, even though this agreement wasn't in effect, when it comes time after the June newsletter comes out, we can use these criteria to determine whether or not we should pay you.
Absolutely.
I think we would have to.
Section A has been in effect for over a year.
I mean, that's the motion.
We would have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I just.
Just, you were just
They
clarifying
weren't,
that it would apply to the prior issues that came out
even
before
though this
signing.
agreement hadn't been
of
executed
this.
yet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel great about either option. You know, I don't love this, but I do think it's a huge step forward from where we were a couple of years ago. And like I said, Jim, I really think that this sort of us versus them is not healthy. And if it could just be town, all of us together, it would be better. But I am willing to try one more time to hope that this may work out, because I know that people want to see us do that. But
They do.
I hope it works out, and
I
I
do.
hope we
No,
don't
it
have
will.
to fight
They do.
about this in public in the future,
I
because that's not
totally
healthy
agree.
for any of us.
None of us, I agree.
Okay, all right, those are my comments. So we have a motion and a second on the table. Anything else before we vote?
I guess I would just ask, and I guess the question is for you, Jim, if this agreement passes and June comes and people come out of the woodwork saying that this whatever, and we vote no, then we have tried your way.
Absolutely.
So then
I-
what would the next step be?
I'm-
Would you be
I-
willing
I-
to try?
I'd be willing. It's not going to happen. We've already issued 2 of them. You've read them. Everyone in this room has read them. There's been nothing in over a year that has even come close to causing a problem. Nothing. So, you want me to speculate what would happen if there was a complaint? Well,
No, I'm
let's-
just
I'd love to see.
asking. I'm asked. So
Well, then you wouldn't pay.
It's just.
I know, but then what comes next?
That's why I don't like this, because it just always leaves it an open
This is what I'm
question.
saying. Like,
I know, I hear you.
Like we have to just
I hear
stop.
you.
Just stop. Like this is the opportunity.
You're worrying about something that's never going to happen.
This is the opportunity.
This document assures, if you
we
read
have
Section
heard this.
A,
No,
We've heard
nothing that happened in the past
Can you shut-
could happen
Jim-
with Section
Jim,
A.
can you
We've
shut
heard-
your microphone off,
It's okay,
please?
we've heard it. We've heard your stance very clearly. And John, I hear you.
Like over
And
and,
I
over
hear you.
and over again.
I hear you.
We're
I'm really torn about this, because I really, really, really think it should come into the town. But I also, these are the things we asked them for before that they refused, angrily refused. And now, and that is true. I was there. And so I don't want to discount the effort. And so I'm really torn about it. I'm being honest with you. I could go either way on it, but we have a room full of people that feel strongly about
That's
it.
exactly my point.
I know.
We have a room full of people, but we have a town.
Yeah, I know.
there.
There's
And
3,900 voters.
We will ask you to leave, Lois, if this continues.
The public,
okay?
you guys got
Please.
to, everyone got to
Please.
speak. Everyone got to
Madam
speak.
Chair?
Yes,
Madam Chair, not that I wouldn't love to debate this another couple hours.
I'm sure you would.
Second,
Yes, there is.
take a vote of the board and move on.
Yep, yep. Everybody comfortable taking a vote?
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll take a roll call vote. Andy?
Aye.
John?
No.
Paul?
Aye.
Letty?
I
Aye. Yes? Can you clarify? I think I heard you say aye.
said aye.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
I'm torn about it, and I'm not happy, but I'm going to vote aye, because I think it's worth trying again, but I'm really hoping this is going to go okay.
It will.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And the community thanks you.
All right.
Quick break, Madam Chair. I just need to use the,
Yes, we will take a short recess. Could we bump, hey Karen? Karen, can we bump some of these things? And do we have anything for non-public? Okay, so why don't we just do that, and we can bump, is there anybody from AV here? No, were you gonna do the AV? Lois, let's just let it. Lois, just let it go. Letty, were you gonna present the AV stuff? Are you okay if we bump it? Since it's 9 o'clock. And then the rec MOA. Okay, we can do that. Yeah, try to get out of here.
June 15th. Okay. Fortunately, that is like a good weekend. Good. Before my 45th high school reunion.
That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
What did you end up having? I had a surgery botch.
You sure you want to break? Yeah, it's only quarter of 9.
Last 5 years I had 3 of these attacks where
Maybe we can get through the last item or two.
they take me to the emergency room and they give me the body. The pain goes away.
I shall find out. Oh, no, it's Letty. Letty is back. Okay. She's right back.
The good news is we haven't found it.
Right, well, they know that it's a fusion pole, and, but, you know, so, doctor this time, she gave me a cycle, she said, you know, this might work. She goes, you start to feel a pain or twinge. Oh my gosh, it's not just one. They usually work in the
Is the lady, yeah, one second.
So, we're hopefully I don't have it yet.
Right.
If I start to get that, a whole bunch of bars in their purse, so I said,
You hanging in there, Angie?
Get ahead of the pain.
and I pray God.
I'm still here.
You're still there.
I gotta work till 11 a.m.
Okay, all right. So we're not holding you up.
Is that Janice's? Yeah.
We're just waiting for Letty to come go to our. Let's get going. I think she made progress. Okay. Yeah, after 3 hours, you know, sometimes you gotta use the facilities.
Yeah.
That's a long stretch for her.
Yeah, after you hit 60, yeah. That 3-hour interval.
At any age, 3 hours is a lot.
Yeah.
I will do the police station. If you're done, then we'll come up and.
They're here to clean. They're like, are you still here?
Thank you so much.
Get out of here.
You're great, actually.
They're like, why are you still here?
Well, the thing is, like, and last week or 2 weeks ago when we were here
Yeah.
until 10, he was like, I'm really sorry. I was like, I thought you were still staying. We'll come back tomorrow. That's fine.
That's nice.
But it was nice for them to send me email and say, no,
Well,
you can
Letty
stop.
comes back to the board.
Oh,
Yeah.
the-
Yeah.
Where did she go? She filled the water. She had to go to the leaves. Oh, I can say that. That was personal.
Like they couldn't guess.
I know.
That's why we took a break.
Karen, did you get my note about the Sanborn room tomorrow morning? Is that okay? We just have to go through some files.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Who interviewed me? Well, Brent didn't hear. That's when we order lunch.
Oh, we'll be gone by 10:30. Is that?
It still interferes, but that's okay. We can adjust.
They'll make it work.
Well, we have some collating and some copying. Maybe you could be involved in that, yeah.
Wednesday's order out day. You have to. It's your last time. And don't go out if you want. What do you want, Cora?
Maybe.
Ted will go.
All right. Letty's back. All right. So, can we do the AV issues like super, super fast, or should we bump it?
Nope. I would like to order 2 more microphones so that there's a microphone for each seat at this table.
That would be great. Anyone have discussion or
I
input
think it's
about
about
that?
$1,100. Is that right?
I don't remember. Are we paying for them out of impact fees? Is that the?
What did we pay?
Is that where we paid for the other ones?
Yes.
Yes. Hold on, I can look it up.
Add to the table here.
So that each speaker has one, and we have one for the crowd?
Yeah, so we already have, so basically there would be one at each of these holes, which is aligned with the
Okay.
8 chairs.
I want to say they were about 500 each, so then maybe with shipping
think-
and everything.
How did we end up with not enough? Did we just,
I think,
It was a cost-cutting
We
measure.
cut it.
yeah, and we weren't sure.
and then we realized we really need them? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have appropriate impact fees for that?
Yes.
Right, okay. Do we know the cost, or can we just
Yeah,
approve
hold on, I
them?
think
You
I
have it?
can, actually, Andy, is that one of the ones that I sent to you? Oh, here we go, extra. Hold on.
So I think most of what you sent me was the, camera stuff.
All right, hold on,
Can we just approve 2 microphones and not put a dollar value on it?
up to $1,200, I don't know.
Because we previously approved it, I just don't have the number in front
Hold
of
on,
me.
I can get the number. I don't want to.
Do you want to do this while you're looking that up?
Sure.
There's 2 members of conservation. Their terms had expired in March of '24, so I would like to request, or I had spoken to Becky about it, who's chair of the committee, to reappoint these folks for a period of 90 days for their terms to expire July 31st of this year until you finish working through your reappointment policy.
To
And then
help
they'll
line
go
up with the
through,
process.
and then they'll go through the regular
Are there any
process.
other boards that need similar extensions that we know of?
I don't believe so. Well, I think your alternates go through the end of June. I think your
Okay,
library
so
alternates
these
go
were the
through.
ones.
No, because I'm hoping that will be.
The doc, I mean,
Yes,
it's just a little tweak of the document to clarify that we're moving them to the summer and that we're going to have a collaborative process. It's not a big change, it's a small change. So we have Doug Cowie to be temporarily reappointed as an alternate and Brian Silva to be temporarily reappointed as a member to, does it say on here 90 days somewhere?
No, just through July.
Becky?
July 31st.
I did.
Did Brian want that?
Yes, I talked to him, yes.
Okay.
He wants to be temporarily reappointed. Okay, so, oh yeah, it does say down here, term expires July 1st, 2024. So that would give us time to open up all the applications for this board as well as other boards. Any comment or questions about this?
Motion.
Any seconds?
Yeah, second.
We'll take a roll call vote. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Lady?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll sign these.
Yes.
Yes, they're on the town administration page.
They're also under the volunteer page, I think.
Did you find the price of the mics?
Yes, the total estimate is $1,081.47.
1,000, so let's just say 1,100.
Moved.
Second.
And we'll take a roll call vote for 1,100 for 2 more microphones. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Letty?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's approved. And can we hold off on some of the other communications discussions? Great. The rec van MOA, do we need to do
Andy
that?
said that was okay to
We
wait.
can bump that? Okay. We'll do committee updates really quickly, and I'll just start with a couple quick announcements. June 4th is the deadline to change your political party before the state primary, so if you want to do that, you have just about 2 weeks left before, then you will not be able to do that before the state primary. And just a quick question, if we need to discuss at the next meeting about the First Light phones being transitioned over to Comcast, does that need to come before the board? Because I saw that in the mail.
I executed a contract with Comcast to transfer all of those phones based off of cost. So that's already in the works, and we should be able to make the conversion before June 1st. If not, it would be a prorated rate for just a couple of days.
So we're all set, and we don't need board action on that
Correct.
to move our phones? Okay,
Yep.
perfect, thank you. Quick update as well, that we got an email from Russ Dean letting us know that the Exeter Select Board is going to meet about, with their standard regular meeting. And what he said in his email is that they are going to get the results of the final Pickpocket Dam feasibility study, and they also are going to officially receive the River Advisory Committee's recommendation, which is to remove the dam, and that will be discussed at their next Select Board meeting on May 9th, but they do not anticipate taking final action at that meeting. Oh, sorry, yeah, he wrote May 9th, but I bet he meant June 9th. He said, oh, no, sorry, the RAC meeting was on May 9th. The Exeter Select Board meeting is on May 28th. and he said it is not anticipated that they will take final action that day. He expects that the board may revisit the issue and even vote on the issue at their June 10th meeting. So if anyone is interested in attending that, that is from Exeter, and we do appreciate them communicating with us and keeping us abreast of what is happening with that topic. So I will stop there and turn it over to Andy if you have any quick updates.
Just a reminder, the amphitheater dedication will be June 15th, starting at 2. As a neighbor, I can tell you been a plethora of activity next door.
Plethora.
Plethora. They've been busy. It's been a busy place the past couple days.
Great. Anything else you have for us?
Nothing else.
Okay, John?
Econ Dev, we met and we voted in favor of trying to use some of our funds to search for and hire a grant writer for the town. If we can start looking at what that kind of this would be a part-time, obviously, person that we would be kind of looking for. I'm thinking more like a contractor, right? On a short-term basis to try to give us do some research and then also grant writing, if we could.
And maybe help with the RPC grant, or that would be too short? That's probably too short.
Enough time.
Yeah,
to
that's
do
just
that
a couple weeks.
And then we also voted to support the idea of making Bob Rossman the chair, the new chair of that committee. If you all are, Bob has been on the committee since the beginning. He's a real estate broker, been really wonderful to work with. And I just think that for the long-term sustainability of the committee, that it needs to have someone who's not just me always. And also my travel schedules obviously has historically made some of those meetings a little challenging to get with the frequency. But we now do have a regular frequency and cadence, and that's really positive. But I think Bob would be the right person to.
And remind me were their terms set up? Because I think that Econ Dev was set up like the year before I joined the board.
Yeah, I don't think that we have really formalized that because it's technically a subcommittee of the planning board. So
right.
It's,
so it's not an appointed
but we really
committee.
Should. No.
Right.
Well, it was
appointed by the planning board.
It was years ago. We never went through the whole process.
Right, because it's kind of almost like the open space board on Concom, I think, that it's not an official board. Well,
I mean, it is
a subcommittee,
but it's a subcommittee
rather than a committee.
So technically,
Yep.
So we should probably look at making that more official. But that's as long as there's no objection. I don't think I'd necessarily need a vote for that. But that's the.
Sounds like it might be worth talking with that committee if they want to become a little more official.
I think that they would probably be interested in that.
Okay.
That's my
Might
sense.
be worth talking to the planning board about that, because it is technically a subcommittee of planning, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Rec, we had a visioning session that I had referenced when Becky came up a little bit earlier. So just to provide it is 9:30, so I'm going to be very brief here. But the idea was to exactly address what Becky rightly pointed out was, okay, like what are the next steps around the charrette? So as a rec committee, we met and we said we have this new road that was that came out of the charrette and also addressed some of the safety concerns. We know that we need to take some action not only with that Olson Field where the road is running through now and the pedestrian walkway, but also we don't want to just do like a piecemeal approach to the rec. So we really wanted to see what a long-term vision of the rec facility itself would look like. The committee voted to support the further ideation or conceptualization in probably a more formalized way of actually doing a pavilion type setting over where the Olson Field is. So like a large pavilion that could potentially house pickleball, tennis, basketball, ice rink in the winter months, and pools. So those were the activities that were identified. And also, it's probably important to note that this would also be a really valuable resource for the summer camp to have.
Because it would be covered, right?
Because it would be covered. So around summer camp, we also mentioned the idea that we should establish a fund for Brentwood kids who would like to attend summer camp, but that's not an option for their families, and we would like to make sure that no Brentwood kid who would like to go to summer camp can't go because of financial resources. So I would like to have that conversation with this board. I think that's something that we could easily do. Maybe I can formalize a proposal that we can vote on at the next meeting, if that would be acceptable. And then the last thing is the rec commission. We did really talk in detail, in general, but also general detail about the community center, a community center that could be used for basketball, for voting, for theater and public presentations over at the rec. The big thing is we need bathrooms over there. We need a little bit more storage space. We need bathrooms, and there's no sense in spending $250,000 to $300,000 on some bathrooms when it comes to the septic, having the building put together, all of the pieces that go in there, when we could probably spend between $750,000 and $900,000 on having a facility that we know that the community really needs, so that we're not shutting down the schools for voting. So we have the bathrooms, we have the storage. Basically, again, not the piecemeal approach. Let's just do it right the first time, and go from there. Sorry, that was a little bit longer than I was hoping for, but that's what the vision session had.
One other
gone.
thing about that, there had been talk about phasing that project, right?
Sorry, say that again.
Phasing that project?
Yeah. Well, which part?
The whole building, like it wouldn't be the whole building with all the build out and everything all at once?
No, I think that we would look, I think that the point is if you're gonna do it, like that's where I was going with it, I guess. If we were gonna do it right the first time. So we're not talking like the Cadillac of buildings here. We're talking like a really nice, well done building that has bathrooms, a basketball court, and can be used for voting. Like we're not trying to build the Taj Mahal, but I think that the idea is we would like to be able to like fully utilize the space. If we're gonna start it, we might as well complete it. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yes, thankfully. Sorry.
That's okay. Paul?
Conservation, with the committee for the open space was rounded out. I think that was the most significant thing that happened. I can't recite the names at this point, so.
It is.
Sorry, put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, Lisa McNaughton, who was on the first open space committee.
No. Rob.
Rob Wolfchuck.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
Now I am blanking, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I think
Robin Wright and
Dvorak.
Jeff Dvorak.
Yeah.
Environmental Services, and
Yeah.
Robin Wrighton for design and layout. And I spoke today to another person that has been recommended, who is in environmental services and has served on conservation for a number of years, and it's Heather Dudley Tappan.
Oh.
So we're gonna talk to her as well, so that would round it out.
And we had our little kerfuffle in terms of people who were expired at the last meeting. We had then the alternates vote in lieu of, and I think that's all been now worked out with the temporary appointments.
And to be clear, I never said that people with expired terms could vote. That was never guidance that was given by
There was
me.
some misinformation that was given at that meeting.
To be clear, and I think we're just, saying all this because it was on video for
Sure.
everyone, and it looked a little
And I think
awkward.
there were a lot of questions about the committee appointment process at that meeting. I watched the video. It's really very clear. All committees are appointed by the select board. They always have been. Traditionally, the select board had some different processes where it was a little bit more rubber stampy. And this board in the past couple of years has wanted to formalize that process and make it more collaborative and more healthy. And so those are the changes that we've made, and those changes are not new. The only changes that we're making is lining up the timing and trying to get even more collaborative than it has been. So I know there was some communication failures, or Becky, I don't know, I think maybe you misunderstood some of the things we had talked about the night before. But just to clarify, moving forward, that the boards cannot reappoint people on their own, that that is at the purview of the
And I
select
think
board.
I expressed that. I think
Great.
there was a direct
Yep.
question to me about that.
Perfect. Great, I'm glad that's clarified.
Mentioned that's our select board
Perfect.
role, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
One more note for conservation, they will hold a public hearing on June 4th at 5 PM. The purpose of that public hearing is for them to consider making a recommendation to seek bonds for the Fuller project. So they need to just hold a public hearing, have that formal vote, and then they'll be on the agenda that evening to make that recommendation to the select board.
Okay.
The bond application is well underway, and all of the deadlines to get all of our materials and hold these public hearings is June 14th. So that's why it's kind of a crunch.
So we have to, so if we vote that night, we'll be good?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Letty?
Let's see, planning. Steph talked a lot about it. There was an RPC presentation, review of the 10-year plan process. It sounds like we're maybe gonna get something before our next meeting to vote on for that, for the the projects she was talking about.
We're gonna have to if we're gonna try to apply, because the deadline's the next day.
Okay. So is that something, so who's
gonna do that?
Who's initiating that process?
So it sounds like Steph is very, very willing to help with that. And I think the bulk of the materials are done, because the way he presented it was like, you can take that charrette packet
Absolutely.
and put it forward.
The question is, who's gonna fill out that form?
Let's check with Steph and see if she's willing to
Okay,
spearhead it,
'cause
because it sounded like Steph was willing to spearhead that
If
process.
I've come to learn that if things are not
Yeah, if they're not assigned, they're not
specifically
assigned.
then it's a good idea, but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah, it sounds like officially the application has to be blessed and submitted by us, but that Steph was gonna help, so let's
Okay.
we can pin her
Let's just
down.
make sure that happens.
Yes.
The municipal building committee met last week. We talked a lot about generating a document with a full timeline of how long this has been in the works for, writing something that gives a synopsis and drives people to the website for up-to-date info. There was some talk about how important it is to get information out to the public as frequently, as often as possible, so that when town meeting comes around, nobody is surprised or doesn't know what this project is. There was an idea to maybe phase the project, or at least have that as an option that we look at when we're looking at the feasibility study. So that would be like build both floors, but maybe don't finish the second floor. Wait a year or two to defray that cost. And I think that's
And the
it.
chief is planning to do some monthly public sessions where people can come voice their thoughts,
Yes.
opinions, and questions. And that would be in advance of the municipal
Yes,
building
he's
committee.
planning to have that the week before the building committee so that he can listen to the public thoughts, ideas, dreams about this project, and then bring those to the committee the next week.
Correct.
And I know that he said that there was one, but I don't remember when it is.
I don't know if he picked a date for the first one yet.
He did. But I
Well,
just
we'll
don't-
get it put
I
on
just
the
don't
website.
remember what it is.
I'll just round out by saying that I'm the rep on the BudCom, and we had a good site visit downstairs at the police station and some good conversations with the chief. And some of the discussions were about the fleet management, the car management, that we'd really like to see that be written out and carefully planned, whether it's budget versus detail fund versus other funding. I think that is part of the reason that request was withdrawn, because of the real request to have that be more just transparent and planned out in a budgetary way. And we had the chance to look all around the police stations. People who had never been in there before, I think, got to see how tiny and cramped and flood prone it is, which was good. And we appreciate the chief hosting us. And we're going to be doing a site walk at Fire for our next meeting, and those agendas are posted. And so those are open to the public as always. And we're planning to do site visits at all of the departments, including town offices, throughout the next couple couple of months before budget season. And I think I will just leave it at that. Everybody good? Okay. So if there's nothing else that anybody has, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And we'll take a roll call. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Letty?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll adjourn at 9:37.
I was gonna grab it.